the button. Let's go. Come on.
I was getting my coffee. It
Yes, you
wasn't
were.
I was. It I guess some things just don't change from one venue to the next. So it took longer though than I was expecting for my coffee to brew.
It
So,
happens.
but you know what? We're here.
Well, hello from sunny Southern California, where it is 82 degrees, which is 28 in Celsius.
Thank you for
I
doing the
almost forgot.
sensible conversion
And
for
if
me.
you can believe it, it's a Friday once again.
Hot take for everyone.
You've got coffee and I'm sitting here eating like chicken marinara and broccoli.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're ready to go.
I can say, Ahavtika, I love you.
Actually, me trying to eat proper food and not just junk repeatedly.
It's good. It's
more
better
difficult
for
than
you.
you might expect. Yeah.
I could see that would be a challenge. So, hey, welcome everyone. It's Friday afternoon, as Vish said. Can you believe it? It's 2:00 here on the Pacific Coast.
I was quoting
on Friday,
David Lynch.
January the 30th.
It's
Yeah,
Daily
I
Weather
knew
Report.
that.
Yeah,
I
some
feel
of the
like
people in the
everybody
audience
else
might not know
knew
that.
that. Maybe. I mean, you've done it before, so we have a
Yeah.
fairly loyal set of viewers who would have seen and remembered. But I suppose it's possible not everyone. So if you're
Yikes.
new here, oh wow, that's very, very cold.
That's
Yeah.
not okay.
No,
Not
no,
okay at
it's
all.
not. So it's wet here today. It's considerably warmer than -30, but also considerably cooler than 28. So it's in there somewhere. But welcome to my channel, everyone. I'm Kip Davis. I'm a specialist in early Judaism and the Dead Sea Scrolls and a scholar of the Hebrew Bible. And if you're new here, we stream on Fridays at 2 in the afternoon. And usually we do an assortment of things. Quite often we'll do a teaching stream where we'll dive pretty deep into a text or into an element of the Hebrew Bible or Old Testament religion or early Judaism. Lots of times we do response videos to various apologetics streams, and we're going to get a little bit of both of those things today. I usually say hi to people, so there's a few people here I'm seeing. Chenka's here, and Bitcores is here, and John is here, and yeah, there's a lot of mistakes in the book. Hatekva, weirdo CKA Evan. I'm just gonna call you I'm not here. But yeah, it's good to see you. Prixie Purple is here. I hope you are surviving your Hebrew homework. And Katie Lewis is here. Katie has a new show that runs on Sundays called Nerd Church, where she and some friends are going through the Catholic liturgies, the texts that
okay.
they read
Yeah.
for it's fun. I popped on there I think a week ago, or no, 2 weeks ago now almost. And Dapper Dinosaur was on with them a few days ago, I noticed. So go check it out, everyone. Nerd Church. You can leave a link if you want.
They fell ashamed because
Yeah,
they didn't recognize me in the thumbnail. It's because I'm in my Clea cosplay.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
from Doctor
a hell
Strange.
of a picture. So it's yeah. But no, it's good. People check out the thumbnail.
Kip told me specifically, said Apologia, that this is going to be a good stream. It's hard to ignore that kind of independent assurance.
Well, see the way
Blessed
this yeah.
assurance, the stream will be good.
The way this tends to work is on the basis of my level of preparation, and I spent a lot of time working on stuff for today's stream, in large part because we're going to be talking about the stories of the conquest in the book of Joshua, which is something that I have done several times already on YouTube before. And I don't want to just keep doing the same thing and rehearsing the same stuff over and over again. So today, as we go through another video full of bad apologetics, I also thought it's
Is there
important
any other
to
kind?
no, no, there's not. You're right. So I also thought it would be really worthwhile and useful to dig our teeth into some of this stuff. Why do scholars approach these texts the way they do? What is the book of Joshua really about? One of the things I'm going to talk about a fair bit as we start here, certainly, is the various ideas, a couple of ideas that scholars have, my favorite ideas, with regards to the setting and the occasion for the writing of something like the book of Joshua. And maybe where some of the source material comes from, which I think is revealing. No, it's not, Simone. Today's stream is not going to solve your academic problems. And I appreciate your willingness to stick with me nevertheless. And I mean, I am going to be talking about Cherem today, so I know this is particularly perplexing for you, but I'm sure that anything I say today is stuff that you already know this. So but I appreciate you being here. So yeah, uh, we might as well just jump into this.
Okay.
Oh, by the way, if you weren't, I got a new one. If you weren't here on Saturday night, we now have
unless they're a person who's really into the fashion industry and is obsessed with shoes, you never see feet or shoes on a ghost.
It's true.
Okay.
I'm just not even sure what to do
All right.
with shit like that. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. So today, what I'm gonna actually pull this off first and put this one
I was
up.
gonna say, you got something
Today,
pulled up.
we're going to look at a video that comes to us from Melissa Doherty, who's been on my radar for a bit, although I think this is new new for me, covering anything from her. I don't think that that I have yet. She's got a pretty big channel. She's often had Wes Huff on talking about the Bible, and she does a lot of other apologetic stuff. So, and why don't I see the one that I want? Sorry, now I'm looking for the oh, there it is. Okay. So she this is a new person for me, and probably not new for some of you guys. I expect a few of you probably recognize her, know who she is. I always assume Paul Copan was
Means
spelled
is
Copan.
yeah, it's spelled Copain, but Copan, like because it sounds vaguely French.
Vaguely French. Yes, that's true.
And that makes
It
me
does.
laugh because there's a parody account where the person's display name is Hurt Copain. I laugh
Nice.
at that every time.
After watching this, I'm wondering if it's pronounced Copan or if it. I've always said Paul Copan, but
Or
she
Coppin.
keeps saying She keeps saying Copan with the emphasis like that on the final syllable. So I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced, but she's got Paul Copan on for like a 90-minute conversation about the one topic that everybody seems to talk to Paul Copan about, which is terrible things in the Bible. And he seems to think that he's got worthwhile solutions for the terrible things in the Bible. I tend to think usually not, but we're going to check some of these out today. I've already been in. By the way, I should point this out too. I believe Skeptics Bible Project caught me onto this video. So if you guys are watching, then thank you for sending me the link for that, and causing some frustration. I always enjoy that.
Paul asks if I'm wearing her apology or toast. Actually, no. Whoop.
I love it.
There's a part at the bottom you can't see that says, even though it tries to kill me sometimes. And it was part of a fundraiser after the Altadena fires in LA last year. I bought this.
Nice.
So. It's mostly a way for me to, contribute to the cleanup and support. But sure, it's cool. So one of the few times I've broken my no new t-shirts rule. If there isn't, Paul, get on that.
Get on that, Paul. There's an I fucking heart the Bible shirt. You can get one of those.
There is.
From the merch store. So yeah, but we may as well get going here.
Right.
And in the first part here, Melissa's just going to introduce some of the things that she's talking about, and then she's going to introduce
biggest
Paul
hindrances to trusting the Bible or taking a lot of what it said seriously was the violence in the Old Testament. It seems like every generation tends to ask the same problematic questions. Violence in the Old Testament. It also talks about slavery and polygamy and what's going on here. And so we answer the same questions every generation.
Can you pause for a second?
One person that I have found.
All right. I mean, she's not wrong about this, except that I do feel like maybe the slavery question is one that nobody was really asking. Until maybe 200 years ago, right? That feels fairly. It's not like there were people who were in the 6th century church who were just apoplectic about what on earth they're going to do about slavery. Nobody seemed to think it was much of a problem back then, or very few people, at least. So,
okay, that is, at least in this generation, who is answering those questions is my friend, Paul Copan. He's written multiple books on this topic, taking questions like this and more head on. He doesn't skirt around it. He really attempts to try to answer these questions.
Yeah, why don't you tell our viewers a little...
that book, by the way,
because God a Monster, it's like, look, God is what you want it to be, because there are as many verses about God's compassion and patience as there are violence and punishment. So
it's true, and there's a the text, it's as we have it, is very clearly not speaking with a univocal voice, right? Or
play the clip.
Sean, I got. Oh, damn it! I was. There we go.
Univocal voice.
Clearly, it's not. It's just not. So yes, you do have to kind of pick and choose your way through it. If you're forming a theology out of it, that's the way to do it. To be honest about what's in the text and then work your way through that to an acceptable conclusion that's not going to turn you into a monster. Because there are certainly people in our world today who are more than happy to just lean into all those terrible things and to promote that shit. So don't do that. But yeah. Okay.
A bit about who you are and what you do.
I do work in the area of philosophy of religion, apologetics, theology, biblical studies. I teach at Palm Beach Atlantic University in the MA Philosophy of Religion program. So I've been at Palm Beach Atlantic University for 21 years. It's my 22nd year. And I've done work, writing in a number of different areas. I guess the things that I'm asked to speak on most often are related to Old Testament ethical questions.
And the reason a lot of them have problems is because they need God to be either all good or all bad. There's no room for gray.
No room for gray.
That's why there's every generation has to figure this out. I'm like, why don't you just listen to the people who have been wrestling with this and letting it speak for itself for thousands of years?
Yeah, it's very true.
So
So I wanted to mention a couple things. One of the things I wanted to mention is that book that Paul Copan wrote, Is God a Moral Monster, is probably 25 years old by now, I think, at least. It might even be a little older than that. It's been around for a while. There's an excellent, freely available, comprehensive review of that book in a document called Is God a Moral Compromiser? It's over 80 pages long. It was written by Tom Stark, who's got graduate level training in biblical studies, and he's a very good writer as well. I encourage people to check that out because I think it effectively eliminates any feasibility of the arguments that Paul is attempting to make in that book. But I settle on this a lot. He spends, as he points out, a lot of his time, and his career has sort of been in this trajectory of addressing ethical problems within the Old Testament. He's a professional philosopher of religion. That's what his training is. That's what where his work in his PhD is. That's where he teaches at Palm Beach Atlantic University, which is a private Christian school. So I get it. I kind of get it, right? Like, on the one hand, yeah, this is something that a moral philosopher is going to grapple with. The problem I constantly have with encountering Paul Copan and Paul Copan's arguments, and I've talked about this on this channel before. We've talked about Paul Copan before on this channel. I made videos about Paul Copan before, and it always comes back to this. He clearly does not understand the biblical text on a scholarly level, on a critical level, which is a real problem when it comes to attempting to then grapple with the ethical questions of what's in the text. If you can't fully comprehend what's going on in the text on a regular basis. So philosophers, just get the hell off my lawn. I'm serious. I'm just tired of having to make this point over and over and over again, whether it's Paul Copan or Mike Jones or someone else. Just stay out of these questions that are the purview of biblical scholars until you can effectively engage in the work of biblical scholars. And so far, Paul Copan does not demonstrate that ability at all.
He's an apologist.
Yeah.
Scholarship is inconvenient to them.
It is inconvenient, yes. So we'll show a bunch of that today. I want to set a couple things in people's minds as we start here. Let's grab these super chats first, though. They've got a few here already. From Archival Blob, Hatikva Lechulam. Oh, sorry, Lechuchem. And Auntie, Hatikva to Copan. And his ilk. Any tips for commentaries that do a good job of weaving in a feminist perspective? Wow, I actually have no idea.
Simone actually did respond to that with the JPS commentary on Ruth.
Nice. Cool. Thank you, Simone. So it's great having people within my chat on a regular basis who know what they're doing. I appreciate it a lot. So, but thanks, Archival Blob, for the question. And thank you, Simone, for addressing it. Lil of all trades, for $2, it says treats for Dagon. I should make him a treat jar. Oh yeah, he would love that. Right now, because there's people in my house, he's not spending a lot of time in the office, and he's not here today. He's downstairs hanging out with people. So the treat jar, my treat jar is here, but I will make sure to give him a treat later. He actually did have one just before the stream. So, but I'll make sure he gets another one. Thank you, Lo. And well, finally, from Tad. Tad is mad for $5. I work in the field of philosophy of religion and also lying about philosophy of religion. Yeah, that's very true. Very, very on point. Thank you for that. So, okay. A couple things to start here. When it comes to, we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about the book of Joshua today and talking about these stories contained in the book of Joshua that I just typically identify as the conquest narratives. And I feel like if you're going to get into the question of these texts, what they are, if you're going to teach anything about these stories, you need to address this on two levels. How should we read the biblical conquest stories? In the first place, I think you kind of have to start here with an historical reading. Right at the outset, the question we need to be asking, insofar as these stories are concerned, is what grounding do they have in things that actually did happen? The stories are set in this transition period between the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. How much are these stories reflective of actual history? And to what extent is that reflection? I think it's fair to say that the conquest stories are certainly picking up on deeply ingrained cultural, social memories of what happened at the end of the Bronze Age, at the end of the 13th, the beginning of the 12th century BCE, when there was a widespread, systematic imperial collapse all around the Mediterranean. Something that scholars have come into the practice of identifying as the Bronze Age collapse. And this had a deep impact on the region of Canaan, modern day Palestine, and the people who lived there for hundreds of years after these events remembered what happened, or at least had heard stories of things that had happened, what the region was like in this period from hundreds of years ago. And I think a story like Joshua's leading the Israelites into the land of Canaan, out of the land of Egypt, reflects that reality. So to that extent, there is a grounding in some memories. There are probably echoes of some things that might have happened at that time in that space, which are preserved in various ways in these stories in the book of Joshua. But it's certainly not something that we can derive actual history from. Scholars, archaeologists have spent an awful lot of time working on this question for nearly 100 years now, and this is the resounding conclusion that the conquest did not happen. It is a fiction. While it's cleverly written fiction to recall these echoes and these memories of things that did happen at the end of the Bronze Age, this is a fiction. Some of the tools
also,
that we use to
may I, the tendency for people who, I guess, are former Christian, internet atheists and anti-theists, it's all fiction, it's all fairy tales, and that to them is a shorthand way of saying you can just dismiss it, it's worthless. But excuse me, the thing that you're talking about here is the text as we have it does not record history as it happened. So it's fictional in the sense that if the events occurred in any, variation, it's not what we have passed down to us. So
yes,
it's fictional in the sense that the portrayal is not accurate. It doesn't make it worthless or fairy tales.
Exactly. And I think that this gets us into well, first of all, the tools at our disposal for this sort of an investigation are the findings of archaeology, the material culture of the region. We pay very close attention to what the discoveries are telling us about the people who lived there and the events that happened. And then the other thing is epigraphy. If we can find actual written sources that correspond to the period and talk about what's happening in the region, all the better we are for it. And we're fortunate when it comes to the Bronze Age collapse. We actually have a wealth of documentary evidence from Egypt, from Anatolia, from Palestine itself, which provides us a wealth of information about the things that were happening in Canaan at this time. So, like I said, it is just very richly preserved. So, one of the things that we can do on a textual level in this investigation is carefully reading the text that we have and teasing out, recognizing sources behind them. This is what's called source criticism. Source criticism helps us to see the individual sources, writings behind the writing, stories behind the stories that the biblical writers are using to craft their own narratives and their own retellings of events. In this case, we're fairly confident. One of the problems with the book of Joshua as we have it, the text as it stands for us today, has to do with the fact that it's clearly derives from multiple sources, at least two. And these sources are often telling the same story differently. I've got a couple of examples here for you. Well, I have an example here for you. In chapter 4, maybe where you see this most clearly is in this short narration of the significance of the splitting of the Jordan River. If you know the story, it begins on the eastern side of the Jordan River, just as the sons of Israel, led by Joshua, are about to enter into the land of Canaan. And then the waters of the Jordan River split in half, and everybody walks across and ends up on the other side on dry land. Very reminiscent of the crossing of the Yam Suf that occurred in the book of Exodus. So this is from Joshua chapter 4 verses 6 to 7, and I want you to think as you look at this, what is the significance, according to this writer, of the crossing of the Jordan River. The text says this: "So shall this be a sign in your presence. Tomorrow when the sons ask," by the way, to commemorate the crossing of the Jordan River, Joshua erects a marker, basically piling a whole bunch of stones on top of one another as a memorial, right? And then this is what he says to the people: "So shall these stones be a sign in your presence. Tomorrow, when your sons ask, 'What are these stones to you?' you should tell them, 'The waters of the Jordan were cut off because of the ark of the covenant of Yahweh. When it passed through the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. So these stones shall be a memorial to the sons of Israel for all time.'" So what is it? What is the sign? What is significant about what happened here? It's about the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh. He says it right there. The waters of the Jordan River were cut off because of the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh passing through. But then we read a little bit later in verses 21 to 24 this: "When your sons ask their fathers tomorrow, saying, 'What are these stones?' you shall inform your sons, saying, 'On dry ground Israel crossed the Jordan, this place. For Yahweh your God dried up the waters of the Jordan from before you until you had crossed, just like what Yahweh your God did to the Yam Suf." This is often translated in English Bibles as the Red Sea, the famous crossing of the sons of Israel in the Exodus on their way into the Sinai. "When he dried it up from before you until we had crossed, to make plain to all the people of the land the hand of Yahweh. It is strong, so that you shall fear Yahweh your God for all time." Are these the same thing, Vish? No. There's different rationales at work here. These are not, I would even say, necessarily complementary rationales. The language, the structure in the original Hebrew is different in terms of how the sentences are formulated. You can even pick some of that up in the English, I think. But there is a clear difference in rationale for the crossing of the Jordan River to get into the land of promise that indicates to scholars reading this right away, you know what, this really looks like somebody is combining separate sources talking about the same thing and providing different rationales for it. So, and this brings us then to, I think, the next level of our reading. After we've taken an historical appraisal of these texts and after we have sorted out their relationship to the history that we know it from outside sources, then I think it's useful to take a rhetorical reading of the texts. And this is moving in the direction of what Vish was talking about. What is the value of these stories if they're not communicating to us a history? What are they doing? What is this story about? Collective identity. That's part of it. I'm going to suggest some other things today, But this also helps us to sort out when a text like this was written. If we can figure out what these texts are about, it helps us to at least narrow some plausible instances, some plausible settings in the life of the people who collected this literature for its composition, its reception, its circulation. Some of the tools at our disposal for this are the literary and intertextual observations that we have of the text itself. This is where we use a lot of textual criticism if we have the manuscripts to show us some of the changes even in the texts, the text copies of as we have them. There's actually quite a bit of textual variation in the book of Joshua. I'm not going to talk about any of that today, but this really further muddies the waters with respect to identifying what this text looked like. But it also helps to clarify some things for us too, in terms of how people understood the literature over time. It's very useful. So I'm just going to read to you something here from Thomas Dozman's most recent commentary on the book of Joshua. He published in 2 volumes in 2015 and 2023. In 2015, in his second volume, his 2023 volume, he provides, I think, this very useful summary of what the book of Joshua is about, sort of like an overview of the book of Joshua. And here he says, the conquest of the land in Joshua chapters 2 through 12 centers on the procession of the Ark of the Covenant from Shittim, east of the Jordan River, to its resting place at the mountains of Abal and Gerizim near Shechem on the west side of the Jordan River in chapters 2 through 8. The procession includes a series of revelations into the nature of Yahwistic religion at 4 locations in the region identified as Benjamin in the second half of the book. At the crossing of the Jordan River, Yahweh is revealed as El, the living, Joshua 3-4. At Gilgal, Yahweh discloses that he is the God of the Exodus who is able to remove the disgrace of Egypt. That's in Joshua chapter 5. At Jericho, Yahweh wages holy war in Joshua 6. And at Ai, the theft of booty clarifies the demands of covenant loyalty to Yahweh as the God of Israel. That's Joshua 7. The goal of the procession is the mountains of Abal and Gerizim. It's further up in the north. Later identified within the region of Manasseh, where Joshua builds an altar to Yahweh as the God of Israel. That's in chapter 8, verses 30-35. That's an important text, and I'll come back to that in a little bit. The first half of the book concludes with Joshua defeating the remaining indigenous nations in Joshua chapters 9 through 12, thus clearing the region for the distribution of the land to the 12 tribes. The second half of the book describes the distribution of the land to the tribes in Joshua 13-23. The allocation of the land may be divided into 3 parts at distinct locations in chapter 13, verse 8 to chapter 19, verse 51. East of the Jordan River, Moses allocates land to Reuben, Gad, and East Manasseh in Joshua 13. At Gilgal, Joshua distributes land to Judah in Joshua 14-15, and to the sons of Joseph, made up of Ephraim and Manasseh in chapter 16-17. And at Shiloh, Joshua allocates the land to the remaining 7 tribes in chapters 18 through 19. Shiloh remains the setting for the appointment of the cities of refuge and the Levitical sissies. The Levitical sissies. Ouch. The Levitical cities in chapter 20-21.
Laughs in
as
Judahite
well,
priesthood.
as well as the conflict over the altar east of the Jordan River in Joshua 22. The distribution of land is framed by themes of the remaining land in chapter 13, verses 1-7, and the remaining nations in Joshua 23, which creates tension with the account of the successful distribution of land to the tribes in chapter 13:8 through 19:21, and with the completed conquest in Joshua 1 verse 12. So I'm going to pause here for a second to point this out. What he just noted there is that there is this created tension within the book because of the combining of these sources based on these two themes. In the first part of the book and in a lot of the source material, you have this successful distribution of the land to the tribes within a total conquest. Everything's finished. The land is emptied of its inhabitants. All of Israel's enemies are destroyed, and the tribes take possession of their inheritance. But then in the later parts of the book of Joshua and in other places too, there's also this theme in which there are still nations that need to be dispossessed. There are still parts of the land that need to be conquered and occupied by the tribes of Israel, that it's incomplete. There's this tension at work here. He's going to go on to say later on in his commentary how this works out and how we can see again that this is an author or an editor working to combine his source material into something coherent and to situate his book, this independent book of Joshua. Dozeman is of the opinion that this is an independent work distinct from the rest of the Deuteronomistic history, and I think he makes a good case there. But he wants also to make this point that the book of Joshua is viewed by authors or editors at some point in time in conversation with other things like the book of Judges directly after it and like the book of Deuteronomy that precedes it. And so there is an effort at work here, either by the author of the book of Joshua as we have it, or by a very active editor to bring it into conversation with these other works. And that's why you see a lot of this tension at work within the text. And this is also something that Paul Copan is going to point to in his apologetic and his excusegetics for what's happening in the book. So, all right. So I think that's where we're starting. And then we're going to bring the video back here. And Melissa's going to ask her first question to Paul. And here, I want people to pay attention, specifically pay close attention to the question that Melissa's asking Paul. And then I want you to think through about whether or not he's answering that question or a different question that maybe she didn't ask.
Okay.
I consider some of these to be the most common questions that people would ask about violence in the Old Testament. And the first one I'm going to ask you has to do with justifying the wars that God commanded. Uh-huh. Did Israel sometimes just claim God was on their side to justify their wars?
When it comes to the question of the first part of your question of, isn't he kind of favoring Israel to do these sorts of things that he's selecting them? And this one looks like favoritism, like Israel can do no wrong and so forth, when in actual fact, God says, in Genesis 15:16, he tells Abraham that he's going to wait until the sin of the Amorites is complete.
Did you hear how he reframed her question? Mm-hmm. And maybe I'm being really picky and pedantic here, but I just don't know if that's the question that she asked.
It wasn't directly. It wasn't.
She
explicitly said, "Is Israel saying that God's on our side, and are they justifying?"
As a means, as a justification for what they're doing. God told us to do this. What did he reframe her question as?
well, they're not perfect. And, I mean, it seems like favoritism, but God picked them. So,
Right? That's kind of I think it sort of sets it on another foot where he's taking for granted that God has done this. I thought it was a very good question that she asked. Actually, I just don't think. I just think the way that he reframes it and he pivots on this doesn't even provide an option for actually answering that question. It's a super important question, especially with respect to.
She's asking specifically about the tribal conquests.
Yeah.
He's starting to talk about Abraham. That's not what she asked. Specifically,
Nope.
it is not what she asked. This is talking directly about the narratives in Joshua, about the conquest of the land. It's not talking about Abraham. So he's slick.
He is slick. What's the timestamp that you're what time are we at here right now?
208.
Oh, okay. All right. So at this point, I guess so that's after my first timestamp. So but this I'm going to bring up my my slides again here, and we're going to talk about this for a little bit here before we move on in the video. Whoops, what did I just do? That yeah, okay, iPad. There we go. So, importantly, the question that she's asking, I think, is really getting to the key point here with respect to what these texts are. She's basically asking him, are the writers of this story, are the events being described in a way that propagandizes stuff that actually happened? It's a way of whitewashing the actions of the people on the ground in the language of, well, this is what God told us to do. God gave us these instructions to wipe these people out. Therefore, we're justified in doing so. So I want to start here. I want to start with propaganda. I wrote a book about this, by the way, on the topic of how propaganda functions in a variety of texts in the Bible. I actually don't talk a lot about the conquest stories or about the book of Joshua, but we're going to do that today. So this is where I'm starting to venture into this question of the rhetorical function of the book of Joshua. If this is a piece of propaganda, then what is it doing? And where can we historically set a text like this, if not at the transition between the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age? So, the first thing, oh, right, iPad. Okay. I'm going to provide two suggestions here for what I think are two plausible settings for the writing of the book of Joshua. And the first, I think, is in the 7th century BCE. And I mean at some point in that full 100-year period, like between 700 BCE and between 600 BCE. And I think this text was written as a propaganda piece to justify northern expansion from the perspective of the kingdom of Judah. So one of the things that we know of this period in time from the archaeological record and from some of the demographic estimates that scholars are able to make based on the data that we have is that there was considerable population growth within the region, particularly within the Judean highlands, and a lot of expansion of influence of the Judean kingdom. A lot of this was natural, coming coming at the end of the kingdom of Israel in the north, the northern kingdom of Israel, which wielded the most strength, power, and influence in the region at the time of the 8th century, came to an end in 722 BCE. The Assyrians destroyed the northern kingdom along with the kingdom of Aram, and displaced all the people, as was their policy. They moved a bunch of people from elsewhere in the Assyrian Empire into the northern kingdom, and this also probably pushed a lot of refugees from the north into the south, and we see this reflected in the demographic data that is collected by archaeologists. They will tell us that in the region there's probably a fourfold, like a 4 times increase in just the general population of the region. I think at the time of the downfall of the kingdom of Israel, the population in Judah was about 100,000 for the entire region, and this kind of explodes to nearly 250,000 people within the city of Jerusalem. We're told that in a 20-year period, following the end of the kingdom of Israel, the population just in the city of Jerusalem increases by 10 times, a 1,000% increase in a 20-year period. So there's clearly this massive influx of population. One of the things I'm going to be drawing from a couple of different sources today. One of those is Christian Frevel's excellent book on the history of Israel from an archaeological perspective. Sorry, did you want to?
No, I was just showing that there are people in the chat that are also remembering the text that you're mentioning about refugees, and
right?
Bringing in Israelites from the north.
Isaiah hints at this too. That this is happening at this time. So another one of the texts that I'm drawing from today is an excellent article by Tracy Lamoche. Vish is a fan. You remember Tracy Lamoche, don't you, Vish?
Oh yes. Yes. Love Tracy. Saw Tracy speak at SBL. Love that work.
So she wrote a chapter in a book on genocide studies. She does a lot of work in genocide studies, and she wrote a chapter in a book on genocide studies called "Dispossessing Nations: Population Growth, Scarcity, and Genocide in Ancient Israel and 20th Century Rwanda." And in this article, she compares a lot of these features, demographics, in terms of population sizes and the makeup. She looks at resource transference and resource capture as it took place in the Rwandan genocide, and then asks good questions, I think, about her observations of these things taking place in Rwanda in the 1990s, and says, like, can we actually see some of this stuff happening in 7th century Israel Palestine, or 7th century Israel Palestine, the 7th century Kingdom of Judah after the fall of the Kingdom of Israel? And I think she makes an excellent case for this stuff taking place. So, I keep hitting my keyboard when I'm actually supposed to be hitting my iPad. So she looks at population growth and land scarcity as features behind a lot of genocidal rhetoric and genocidal activity, and she pulls up a couple of texts from the Bible, which she suggests illustrate this at work. And I think she makes some very good points here. This first one is from Micah chapter 2. This is verses 1 and 2. Micah was a prophet of the 7th century. just probably at the time of the king Manasseh, who ruled for most of the 7th century, but even into the time of Ammon and Josiah after him. Micah chapter 2, in verses 1 to 2, the prophet says this. Hoi is a Hebrew word, which is like it's an interjection. It's like hey you. It's like pay attention. So here the prophet says, Hoi, plotters of iniquity. I'm talking to you. Those who devise evil upon their beds, at morning's light they shall do it, because they have the power. They crave after fields and seize them, after houses, and they take them away. They exploit a man in his house, a man and his, this is the Hebrew word here, this is nachlatol. This is literally his heritable property. You've probably heard me mention this word before. Josh will talk about this word quite a bit with reference to the law codes in the Hebrew Bible. Nachla is the this is your allotment that's been given to you, your tribal allotment, your heritable property, your inheritance as a member of the sons of Israel, guaranteed to you by participation in the covenant of Yahweh. And here the prophet is saying that powerful men in the 7th century are exploiting this and stealing a man's heritable property, something that the book of Leviticus says actually just can't happen. You can't take land that belongs to your brother. You can't buy it even. You can't sell it to a foreigner. It has to remain within the family allotments. This looks like resource capture. There's another text here in Isaiah chapter 5. So this is Isaiah writing earlier, like in the 8th century, towards the end of the 8th century, maybe even into the beginning of the 7th century, during the rule of Hezekiah and possibly even Manasseh, if the text is to be believed. Here he says, for the vineyard of Yahweh Tsabaoth, Yahweh of armies, is the house of Israel. The man of Judah, a planting of his delight. And he hoped for justice, but see, bloodshed. For righteousness, but see, screams for help. I added that last bit in, but I think that's effectively capturing the force of this word here. Hoi! Again, the interjection. Those who adjoin house to house join field to field until there is no room. So it is inhabited only by you in the middle of the land. You see this? There's this increase in population which leads to a decrease, a scarcity of available property and land. And what is to happen under these conditions? The poor people get pushed out as a result of this. So Tracy Lemosh suggests that there's a direct connection of this term cherem, which I've talked about quite a bit, which appears in the book of Joshua, which is used of the annihilation, the total annihilation of foreigners, of people, in this effort to extract and to exploit them for their property, for their resources. She sees this as directly connected to expansionist policies. One of the interesting things about this word cherem is it within the Bible, we see it a lot in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Joshua, to describe what's happening in the process of displacing and eliminating the Canaanites in order to take over the land of Canaan. You also see it in the Misha Stele, which is a very, very important Hebrew inscription from the 9th century sorry, it's a Moabite inscription, but Moabite is very close to Hebrew. It was erected by the king Misha to celebrate his successes against the king of Israel and his allies, which probably also included the kings of Judah. And she points out that this particular term occurs here as Misha is narrating and extolling, celebrating his own victories of expansion and recapture of land in his own efforts to not just throw off his vassalage of the king of Israel, but also to increase his own territorial holdings. She pulls up a couple of texts here also from the prophets where she sees this idea of cherem, this idea of violent expulsion of people in an effort to take their resources, take their property, reflected within the prophets. Here at the very beginning of Amos's prophecy, so says Yahweh, for 3 transgressions by the sons of Ammon, even for 4, I shall not answer him. I won't forgive him. Because they cleaved pregnant women of Gilead, they split them apart literally, with intent to expand their borders. Murder in order to take things that belong to someone else. I think this, for me, might be the most revealing of these texts that she cites in her article here. In 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verses 1-2, in this description of the activities of the sons of Simeon. It says, oh, no, that's not verses 1-2. What is that? Sorry. This is chapter 4, verses 24-43. And I think the most of this comes from the latter part, maybe verses 39-41. But it says this: the houses of their fathers exploded in huge numbers, massive increase in their own population in Simeon. So they went to the approach of Gedor, to the east of the valley, seeking pasture for their flock, and they found pasture, fat and good. And the land was spacious and quiet. The settlers there before them were from Ham. They encroached on these people whose names were recorded since the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah. They struck their tents, and the Meunim, this group of people who were living there, who were found there, they wiped them out until this day and settled in their place. That word there that I've translated and wiped them out, this is the verb haram, which we see repeated throughout the book of Joshua. This is the word that's used to describe this total annihilation of people. And here we see it connected to a tribe of Israel in their efforts to displace someone living in pasture that they've deemed to be valuable. We're going to take it. It belongs to us. And as such, we're going to eliminate you in our efforts to take it. So I think she makes a strong case here for this being an issue during the 7th century, this northern expansion that takes place. And, you know, this potentially provides us a plausible setting for the book of Joshua. So at this point, I want to frame this a little bit differently. 2 Kings chapter 23 tells us of the reforms of King Josiah, who really is the hero of the book of Kings, of the Deuteronomist. And chapter 23 is sort of the climax of the entire book. This is the culmination of Josiah's efforts to reform his kingdom and to return it to its proper worship of Yahweh and the elimination of worship of any other deities, but also any other places of worship to Yahweh. He's consolidating his power. He's centralizing the cult within just the Jerusalem temple. I make the argument in my own book that this is reflective of Josiah's domestic and foreign policy. This idea of the elimination of foreign gods and foreign alliances is really a rejection of outsiders, of other nations, and an insular isolationist policy of it's just us. It's just us and Yahweh. We have to go it alone. We can't depend on anyone else. But Yahweh's going to look after us, and he's going to ensure that we prosper if we just ignore, reject everybody on the outside, which also means destroying, eliminating any sort of foreign influences that are creeping their way into the kingdom as well. But I want to track chapter 23.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Real quick, I was gonna say, how do you reckon with ideas of like lingering Asherah worship and potentially not, depending on where you live? Because we have, evidence that was very much a part of older practice in the people at that time, in that region. So in terms of like seeing themselves as having this one God who is ours and everyone else is foreign, how do you kind of discuss the Asherah thing with that?
So I tend to think that Josiah's efforts and his reforms are just extremely unsuccessful. Really. That this is the motivation, if they happen at all, because there is an open question about that still. Scholars debate whether or not this is something that even took place. Giving the benefit of the doubt to the text in this instance, I think what you see reflected here is an effort to undertake this reformation that never stuck, that that people resisted, that people didn't want, and the king was
for Pete's sake, the Quintilla d'Ajrud, inscriptions.
Yes.
That Asherah tree looks suspiciously menorah shaped, or should I say that the menorah looks suspiciously Asherah tree shaped? And that's a repeated motif. So it's hard for me to think that, Josiah would be successful in getting rid of that in one generation, or possibly even two. Because if that's been your culture and your religious rites for possibly centuries, I don't know, then you're not just going to go, all right, that's not okay. People are going to be like, okay, that's nice, bye. And then they just go worship her anyway.
Seriously, it just didn't work. I think it's just that simple. That it was
do what they
ineffective,
want to do,
and people are going to do
That's
it.
what a lot of religious and even political demagogues just do not seem to be able to recognize, is that you can ban things, you can make them taboo, you can, outlaw them or do whatever you want, and people are just going to do it anyway. So,
Yep.
Oh yeah, and Simone follows up with Josiah's reforms being a failure is pretty well demonstrated just by Jeremiah.
Yes.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed. Big time.
Exactly. So, but I want to track what's going on in chapter 23 geographically, because I think it's interesting in terms of how this maps on to the book of Jeremiah, or Joshua, sorry. So Josiah's reforms begin in the Jerusalem temple. We read about this in verses 4 to 7. The very first thing that he does is he cleans out the Jerusalem temple. In verse 5, it says then that the cities outside of Judah, the cities of Judah, so the smaller settlements outside the city that are part of, this kingdom, that are part of Josiah's holdings, and the environs of Jerusalem, then it says, are purged of the idols and the foreign gods and the other places of worship. Then Josiah goes from Geba to Beersheba, and I think this is important because if you're thinking about this in terms of what's happening then in the book of Joshua, the first thing that happens in the book of Joshua after the sons of Israel cross the Jordan is they have this great big battle. Well, they destroyed Jericho and then Ai, and then they have this great big battle with the southern kings at Gibeah, and they win. But then from there, they go south and they destroy all these other cities in the region and just wipe everyone out and take total control of the region. That's what Josiah is doing here. From Jerusalem, he proceeds south all the way to Beersheba, which is basically on the edge of the Negev of the Sinai. It's the farthest southern border of Judah. Then he goes to Bethel, which is just west and a little bit north of Jerusalem. In verse 15 to 18, he tears down the shrine or the temple that's there. And then, very interestingly,
didn't one of the patriarchs build an altar at Bethel?
Yes.
So he's just like, yeah, screw the patriarchs. I'm gonna tear this stuff down. Good job.
Yep.
Okay. Oh man.
From Bethel, this is very interesting. Josiah goes all the way up to Samaria. The reason this is interesting is because this is not his territory. He is now breaching his own borders. He is now effectively invading Assyrian territory, if the text is to be believed, and he's undertaking a religious form outside of his own country, effectively, outside of his own boundaries.
What it used to be ours.
One of the reasons why scholars tend to think the reforms of Josiah probably didn't happen because, he's not traipsing into Assyrian territory. He's a vassal of Assyria. Yes. He's not traipsing into Assyrian territory to tell them how they're gonna conduct themselves religiously. He's just not going to do that. Not safely, at least. Well, of course, none of that is in the text. This is a total success. But then the next thing he does in the story, he comes back to Jerusalem. He celebrates the Passover. But then the story of Josiah ends on this sad note because he goes out to Megiddo to meet Necho, the Egyptian pharaoh, who is mounting his own rebellion against the Assyrian king. Josiah is an Assyrian vassal at this point, but he's probably also waffling between in his loyalties between Assyria and Egypt, and he picks the wrong side in this case and is wounded and killed as a result here.
You
but this
chose poorly.
Poorly. This is interesting to me, though, in part because Assyria's role in this story is just written out completely by the Deuteronomists as he tells this story of Josiah. But to my eye, when I look at this, he's just following in the footsteps of Joshua. When Joshua is undertaking first his southern campaign and then going into the north and successfully completing his northern campaign. Isn't this just what Josiah is doing?
So he just really thought he could be that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
And as we say, in the South, he got a little too big for his britches.
Yeah. Or the Assyrians were famously forgiving of rebellion. Something that we have to factor into consideration here. Josiah is perhaps able to do some of these things because Assyria's at a point of weakening, which is, this is part of why Egypt starts to press north, right? Josiah maybe feels compelled looking at what's happening in the Assyrian Empire. The Assyrian Empire is starting to crumble. The Babylonians are starting to really push from the east, and it's not that long after after the battle at Megiddo that Nabopolassar sacks Ashur and takes control of the entire Assyrian Empire. So that's part of what's happening here. But I tend to think that this is a good setting for understanding, what's happening in the book of Joshua. The book of Joshua as propaganda for some of the things that Josiah is doing, these expansionistic policies of Josiah, which then are set in this genocidal context. I think there's a case to be made here. Now, something else that needs to be pointed out historically is that even though Josiah is the hero of the Deuteronomist, and he's the one on whom these activities are, he's the guy who's credited with these with what's happening here. It probably wasn't him. This probably did, a lot of this stuff did happen. There was a territorial expansion, but it happened decades earlier under his grandfather, the detestable King Manasseh, who might have been the most successful king of Judah, actually. So I'm just going to read here from Christian Frevel's book on the history of Israel on the basis of the archaeology. Here on page 400, he says that the reign of Josiah from 639 to 609 BCE was strongly influenced by the shift in political power in the ancient Near East. The rapid disintegration of the Neo-Assyrian Empire began toward the end of Ashurbanipal's reign in 669 to 631 BCE. The tenacious revolt of Babylon and Elam could initially be fended off, but the Neo-Assyrian Empire also came under increasing pressure from the north through the Scythians, which penetrated to the Egyptian border. That's according to Herodotus. The union of the Neo-Babylonians with the Medes in the southeast of the empire finally caused it to shudder and fall. Nabopolassar, the founder of the Chaldean Neo-Babylonian dynasty, seized the throne in Babylon in 626 BCE and began military pinpricks against Ashur, which gradually reached into the heartland. Ashur fell in 614, and Nineveh fell in 612 after a 3-month siege. Thus, the Assyrian Empire was de facto defeated. The last Assyrian ruler, Ashur-uballit II from 612 to 610, could no longer be properly enthroned in Ashur. He was beaten after his retreat to the province of Haran in 610 BCE, but was able to flee. The decaying Assyrians sought help from Pharaoh Necho from 610 to 595 BCE, who, although having reconquered Haran in 609 BCE, was unable to stop the end of the Assyrian dynasty and the previously glorious Assyria. In the phase of dwindling Assyrian power, there was no power vacuum in southern Syria and Palestine. This was due to Egyptian interests in the region, which were again growing noticeably in the second half of the 7th century BCE. So what he's saying here is that even though the Assyrian Empire fell, there was barely any opportunity for Josiah to assert any sort of Judean independence because the Egyptians just swept in and took over. He goes on to say that in the coastal plain, the coastal plain, like the Assyrian province of Megiddo, was under Egyptian control, and like the province of Samaria, Galilee, or Transjordan, contains no sign of Josianic expansion. Raz Kletter has suggested that the Judean area can be approximately determined by means of prominent elements of the Iron 2C material culture, the so-called pillar figurines, the inscribed weights, and above all, the rosette stamp seal impressions that followed the Lamalach seals of Hezekiah in the 7th century BCE show in their distribution hardly any expansion beyond the core area of Judah. Whether Josiah's control of the Negev and the Shephelah went beyond that of Manasseh is currently under discussion. The lists of cities in the book of Joshua, or in the Deuteronomist conquest narrative, which are regarded as dating from the time of Josiah, are more frequently mentioned in scholarly research as indirect evidence of Josiah's expansion, but these can be only cited as a program, not as proof of its implementation. Probably there remains only moderate northern expansion from Josiah, which included Jericho and Bethel, so that the territory of the kingdom of Judah at the end of the 6th century BCE was about the same extent as the later Persian province of Yehud, or only went beyond the extent in the south. This slight northern expansion, however, seems to have given impetus to the view that the histories of the two kingdoms, Israel and Judah, were combined for the first time in the first version of the Book of Kings based on the list material and perhaps first drafts from the north from the time of Jeroboam II, and perhaps also for the first time construed with the idea of a united monarchy under the eponomic kings David and Solomon. They naturally saw Judah through Josiah's refraction as stronger, more significant, and so on, and so transferred this view of the history of the collapsed northern kingdom. So what he's saying here is that a lot of this expansionist activity that we see and a lot of the strengthening of the Judean kingdom actually happens under Manasseh, but it gets telegraphed by the Deuteronomist to Josiah, even though Josiah's kingdom probably experienced no expansion at all and was actually quickly overtaken by Egypt as Assyria crumbled.
This is making me wonder about the redactors of the blessings that Jacob gives to his kids and his grandkids, where he puts Ephraim and Manasseh in reversed positions.
Right.
Like, obviously, the man is not the son, but
yes,
this could I'm spitballing here, could be like a wink and a nod to that, blessing coming from Jacob is like, hey, may the younger one be greater than the former. Ephraim gets to be first. Manasseh's, put in the second place.
We don't like
and I'm
that
wondering
guy.
if, we don't like him. Maybe this is a like post hoc kind of way to justify,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think if I'm hearing what you're suggesting correctly, I think there's a lot of problems. I'd like to look into this more, but I think the biblical writers have a lot of problems with the fact that they hate Manasseh, the king, but the most powerful of the tribal allotments in terms of territory and influences is also shares the same name. I think they struggle with that. And I think that's that's a reflection, like you're suggesting. Perhaps there's a nod here in the redaction of the
I think a lot about
blessings.
those kinds of things, the post hoc ideologies and whatnot. It's like you'll see a narrative of, oh, well, here's why we're in constant conflict with the Moabites. Here's why we're in constant conflict with the Edomites or whatever. And it's like they have to kind of make their discomfort fit a little bit. So they're like, yeah, we're related, but here's where they went wrong. And that's why we're in conflict. And I wonder how much of that is something that they really tried to bake in, or if it's their way of wrestling with their own discomfort. Polemics, ideologies, like what's that kind of nuance going on there? Because it feels pretty heavy-handed sometimes.
Yeah, it certainly does. It certainly does.
Yeah,
So,
and is it a general rule to see biblical stories as a bunch of ideologies? I don't think as a broad rule that you could do that. My personal preference is to read them as having like maybe a nugget of something in there that may have happened.
and not all of them.
Sometimes they construct,
right?
yeah,
Like
it's not all of them.
sometimes you can do this.
Yeah,
but maybe not even
sometimes you
most of the
can.
time.
Sometimes you can see a nugget of like, oh, okay, I see where they spun narrative out of this thing. Like the Exodus probably had a nugget of people escaping Egyptian hegemony that got, expanded over time into the greater Exodus, which I'm fine with. There might be ideologies about, like I was saying, with conflict with their neighbors, like Moab and Edom and things like that.
Yep.
Hey, we know that we have a distant, like, ancestral relation, but we did an approved thing for our God and they didn't, so we're in conflict. And I think that's probably a yes and situation. But that's a really good question to bring up.
I need to, sorry, I should probably bring this up. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. This is again from Frevel's history, where he makes this crystal clear in terms of this area, these kingdoms, Israel, Moab, Judah, Edom, Aram, and where they came from. He says Israel originated on the soil of the cultivated land of Palestine. What sounds like a matter, of course, has long been highly controversial in research. The emergence of Israel stands in regional context of deurbanization and reurbanization, as well as religious, social, ethnic, and political group formation. These complex processes are not to be understood as one-time occurrences, but as part of a long-running dynamic rhythm specific to the Southern Levant. It's important to note that the early Iron Age culture not only flowed into the urban culture of the Middle Iron Age, but also originated to a large extent from the late Bronze Age culture and continued well beyond its decline. Again, the development differed considerably from region to region and proceeded differently in the north and the south, differently in the hill country than in the Shephelah, and in Gilead differently from the Jordan Valley. So he's just reinforcing this point, right? The Israelites were Canaanites. The Edomites and the Moabites and the Israelites and the Ammonites, all of them, they were the same people at one point in time. And over time, over hundreds of years of these various environmental, social, political pressures, these kingdoms emerged and formed in competition with one another, but they all started from the same place.
Pat Lowinger, who was in the chat earlier, was talking about how there's a pretty strong avoidance of the late Bronze Age and Middle Bronze Age in a lot of scholarship in, these circles. And I wonder, just keeping that in mind, how much of this is the redactors of the text taking advantage of the late Bronze Age collapse and going, hey, we're picking up the pieces from this very sparse, cultural memory and historical memory that we have, and they're reconstructing it in a way that, gives them a shared identity. It, gives their, I guess, governments priority in the region and say, like, no, actually, we have roots here that are older than, perhaps they really are. And our identity is older than maybe it is, because that's the thing. That's what people were going for at the time. Who's the oldest? Who's the most legit? You have the King's List that go back hundreds of thousands of years to say, no, I'm the oldest. I'm the most legit. So they're following along in a pattern that's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is what we have here. And to summarize this first point, the Joshua story is perhaps written as propaganda for this northern expansion that probably took place under Manasseh, but is credited by the Deuteronomists to Josiah in the language of religious reform. And it's a story remembering what took place during the Bronze Age collapse and using that to forward these ideas of resource capture. All right, but there's another theory I wanna focus on here too, and that is the Sumerian origin myth, which is the one that Thomas Dozeman has put forward in his more recent commentary of the Book of Joshua. He says the Book of Joshua was actually written as Sumerian propaganda sometime in the Persian or the Hellenistic period, prior to the separation, the real clear separation between the fracture of Judaism from the Samaritans, which happened at some point no later than the destruction of the Samaritan temple in the 2nd century. So he says that the book of Joshua had to have been written in the post-exilic period because within it there's a strong dependence on both P material as well as the book of Deuteronomy, and this is something that could have only happened after the exile. I think it's a good point. He also notes that there is a contra, and he tracks some of this in his commentary too, this contra Jerusalem-centric view of Ezra Nehemiah. So Dozeman would actually prefer to see the book of Joshua almost as a competing tradition to what we then see in Ezra and Nehemiah, which is very Jerusalem focused. So I'm just going to read to you his summary of these ideas here. He says that the opposing images between Joshua and Nehemiah Ezra point to a tension between Shechem and Jerusalem as centers of worship in the Persian period. Naaman elaborates on the tension and says the description of all the assembly of Israel, and I think this is interesting, gathering for the dedication of the altar of Mount Ebal in Joshua chapter 8, verses 33 and 35 is very similar to the description of the people gathered as one man in Jerusalem to rebuild the altar to Yahweh in Ezra chapter 3, verses 1 to 2. So Dozeman says about Naaman, he adds that the description of Shechem as the center of worship, quote, plainly conflicts with the depiction of Jerusalem as the sole and exclusive cult site for Israel, end quote. The conflict is also evident from the Judean perspective in Ezra chapter 3, verses 1 to 3, where the author condemns the adversaries of the citizens of Yehud, and in Nehemiah 2:20, when Nehemiah drives away the northern Sumerians, Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite, and Geshem the Arab, forbidding them to participate in the reconstruction of Jerusalem with the words, "You have no share or claim or historic right in Jerusalem." Remember what I said when I introduced the book of Joshua and gave you this overview of the book of Joshua, how a real focal point of the text is the movement of the Ark of the Covenant and its settling at Shechem, which is effectively Samaria, right? And that this is, the place where the Ark stops and the altar is erected and sacrifices are offered for all Israel in Samaria. It's very interesting. So Dozeman continues, despite the polemical aim of the author of Joshua, the intended audience of the book is the entire nation of Israel. Repeatedly, the author refers to all Israel as crossing the Jordan River, suffering from the sin of sacrilege, participating in the stoning of Achan in chapter 7, warring against Ai in chapter 8, and worshiping at Abal and Gerizim in 8 verse 33. Those who make up all Israel, moreover, are the 12 tribes. The all Israel focus indicates that the author of Joshua is not sectarian, but is writing a myth of origin that is intended to include both the northern Israelites in Samaria and the southern Israelites in Judea during the Persian period. The inclusive perspective distinguishes the author from the sectarianism of later Samaritans. The separation of the author from fully developed Samaritanism is reinforced by the content of Joshua 8, verse 30 to 33, where the blessing of God emanates from both Abal and Gerizim on all Israelites, which contrasts with the exclusive emphasis on Mount Gerizim in the Samaritan Pentateuch in such texts as Deuteronomy 27:4 or 11:30. The contrast suggests that the composition of Joshua 8 verses 30 to 33 is earlier, excuse me, than the official separation between Samaritans and Judeans, rather than reflecting an anti-Samaritan point of view, as argued, for example, by Naihan. So he's making this case here that Joshua properly belongs in this period, in the Persian period, and prior to the schism between the Samaritans and the Judeans. This is something that took place during the rule of John Hyrcanus in the late 2nd century, when he destroyed the Gerizim temple. And for my part, I want to say, for the book of Joshua, we're going to go back to the video here, but I want to say, why not both, right? I think there's certainly evidence. What's that?
¿Por qué no los dos?
That's what that means, right?
Yes. Why not both?
Yes. Yeah, I can kind of piece my way through that. Thank you. So, I mean, there's already tons of evidence of lots of editorial activity within the book of Jeremiah. It makes sense to me that these are stories which gained a lot of currency during this period of resource capture in the 7th century, as Judea was experiencing a lot of growth and a lot of expansion. But then at the same time, this northern focus also, I think, makes a lot of sense as a text that really grew into its own during the Persian period, prior to the destruction of the Gerizim temple. All right. So
super chats and comments.
All right.
Oh yeah. What if the conquest story is actually borrowed from the Kush-Egypt conflict rather than the conflict in the north?
I'm not sure what conflict in the north he's
like
there
Samaria
referring to.
northward expansion.
Oh no, I mean, I think really on the basis of the way Dozeman structures his commentary, I just don't think I just don't see it.
But also borrowing someone else's story for your own is a little weird, I think, in this context.
Yeah,
you would really want to prioritize your own stories and maybe embellish them rather than lifting someone else's. But
yeah,
I mean,
it's possible, right?
Yeah, this is the comment from Paluinger.
Material culture and stratigraphic evidence give a very different picture of the Middle Bronze Age and Late Bronze Age Levant. Far too little attention is paid to this evidence by the general public. Avoidance is the norm. Yeah, so this is the stuff that's leading up to the Bronze Age collapse and the situation as it appears. Frevel's pretty good on this. I think actually, when he discusses it,
I think this is referring to stuff like Jericho and the city of Ai already being destroyed by the time the book of Joshua says that people arrive there.
Some of that, right? Yeah. These are this is a region that is certainly by the towards the end of the Middle Bronze Age and the beginning of the Late Bronze Age. This is a contested region, as both Egypt and the Hittite Empire start to expand quite a lot and come to loggerheads, right? So it needs to be understood. Yes, there is multiple authorship within the book of Joshua. I think there's no question about that. And this results in some of the tensions that Dozeman has talked about, and we'll get back to that as Copan continues here. But I think there's also a lot of room here to see this as a text that was written over a very long period of time. So
yeah, but Michael Jones says Hera means to deplace or cast out.
He's not the only one, and it's absolute bullshit. So yeah,
it is. Yeah, Lieutenant Method Navigator for 5. Akhenaten couldn't even get his religious reforms to stick on his own son. That is right. That is a good conversation that was happening while you were talking. Is that the Amun cult was not happy with the Aten thing, and Tutank-Aten was later renamed himself to Tutankhamun to go back and be like, just don't worry about my dad. He was a little
right.
but it's probably the priest because he was very young when he became pharaoh, and everyone was like, you know what? Let's just pretend this never happened.
And this is importantly, this is in a time and a place where the pharaohs were much better positioned and resourced to make something like that happen and to make it stick, right? The fact that they couldn't do it, it just the little Judean kingdom and the king of Judah who's just trying to get by, right? in this big world. He's doing his bit. He didn't have a prayer of these reforms sticking. So
all right. Bethel is also parallel to Chemosh in Jeremiah 48. And Moab shall be ashamed because of Chemosh, as the house of Israel were ashamed because of Bethel, on whom they relied.
Yeah, interesting. Right.
That's a good one. I need to mark that down. Archival blob. In Kings, Manasseh is the ultimate villain. In Chronicles, he has a redemption arc, and it might be because he was so successful in Chronicles needed to justify that.
That's part of it, certainly. But the chronicler, who is promoting this unvarnished he's doing whatever he can to lionize the house of David. So he's really scrubbing out all the blemishes. So but honestly, it's interesting because he still has to reckon with the Deuteronomistic history, right? He can't just ignore that. And maybe by this time too, it's possible that by this time, the information about who Manasseh was and what he actually did was gone. It's entirely possible that they just didn't have it anymore. So, but it's a neat idea though. It's a neat question.
So I do want to bring up this comment before we go back to the Paul Copan video because it leads really well into it. When we claim our God authorizes our violence, it's good. But when those others claim their God demands blood, they're filthy savages. And there's a reason that I brought that up because as you're going to hear, Paul Copan...
This is where we're going next.
His response is almost exactly this. The question that was asked is, did Israel sometimes claim God was on their side to justify their wars? And two, if God's all-powerful and can bring justice himself, why did he choose to send Israel's armies, meaning human beings, into battle wiping out entire nations instead of executing judgment directly himself? Those were the two things that she asked him, and he isn't going to do any of them. So,
completed or filled up. And what sorts of things were the Canaanites involved in? Well, completed that he's going to, God says, one, in Genesis 15:16, he tells Abraham that he's going to wait until the sin of the Amorites is completed or filled up. And what sorts of things were the Canaanites involved in? Well, incest, bestiality, ritual prostitution, infant sacrifice, things that would be considered criminal in any modern society. But God is going to be patient and wait over half a millennium until this actually takes place. So there isn't this precipitous action that God is engaging in. God also told the Israelites that they're to drive out the Canaanites. That's the major.
Yeah. Did you hear what he just said? Yeah, they deserved it.
They deserved it.
They deserved it.
Yeah.
Again, this is exactly what William Lane Craig, low bar Bill, he said the same thing. Well, they were sacrificing their kids and they were doing all this horrible stuff. And if you don't kill their kids, they're going to grow up to be idolaters and bestiality doers and all this other heinous shit. That is disgusting. So
and this is
he didn't answer her question. It's
no.
Did Israel just claim God is on their side to justify what they're doing? And B, why is God not judging people directly instead of using human beings to go do genocide, which makes them morally culpable for, genocide? So this is the one of the things that really, really pisses me off about apologists is they can't just directly engage with the text. They just
And
can't. They're like, well,
exactly.
you know, the Amorites and the Canaanites, they were doing all this horrible stuff, but God had to wait, you know, several hundred years for their, I guess, idolatry and bestiality and child sacrifice and all the other crap they were doing to get really super bad. So I guess he doesn't have a problem with it until it gets to a certain level.
And this is why an historical appraisal of these things is so important. Because, I mean, that's just bullshit, right?
Yeah.
That the propaganda that Paul Copan is repeating here about who the Canaanites were and what they did. So at that point, if you recognize that that is just not accurate of the history of these people, of this culture, then what you're left with is that this is fiction, that this is propaganda, and that raises significantly greater problem. I mean, I think it's this is why I continue to come back to this, and I continue to say to these people, you don't have to do this, right? Like, you can recognize, thank God none of this stuff happened, and this is fiction. Now let's talk about what this fiction is doing and how do we get past that to get to something redeeming or useful.
Really super quick, because this does come up a lot. Is like, yeah, well, God told Abraham to sacrifice his son. God told, you know, a group of people that you're supposed to dedicate your firstborn to me. Okay, yes. Also, that is an earlier tradition of, you know, offering your children as the most like costly type of offering or sacrifice to your deity. Later on in the period of like the prophets, you see them explicitly saying, do not do this thing. So you're watching the development of people being aware of offering your child as an offering or a sacrifice and sometimes doing it. And then later on being like, oh yeah, no, we're not comfortable with that at all. So then God's not okay with it. Which means, again, this is not a univocal text. It's one of those, like, you can't just go, yeah, well, God demanded Abraham sacrifice his son, therefore he was a God of sacrifice and bloodshed. Yeah, but later on in the history of, like, Israel and the redaction, this is not something they were comfortable with doing. And you have to take that into account. Like, you can't just go, yeah, well, it started out bad and it stayed bad with no change whatsoever. Like, it did change. There, you know, I don't want to say polytheism. I prefer henotheism, but some people say monolatry, whatever, it's fine. Worshipping more than one god or being aware of more than one god later on became very uncomfortable. So you have to justify and make polemics against worshipping other gods while you're worshipping the God of Israel. That is a development that happened over time. It did not start that way. So, yeah, as Simone said, religions are internally diverse and religions change over time.
Yes, they do. All right. So we got to keep moving here, but so he's getting, this is just from an internal reading of the text, right? He's just taking for granted what the text says about the Canaanites as accurate and as rationale for their elimination, which, like, on its own is horrendous. I don't care you know, who you are or how terrible you are. There's not anything that warrants, you know, the total extermination of a group of people. This is not anything that warrants that. It's an awful approach to take. That they deserved it. Apologetic is not a good thing. It just isn't. Do you want to do you have some of these texts that we can pull up? There's a handful of
I can
of texts where
pull those
this
up. I didn't have them pulled up immediately, but I can pull them up. You want Leviticus 18 first?
Yeah, let's look at that. This might be the only one we look at, but this is an example of where this idea comes from. That this is what the Canaanites were, and this is what they did and what they practiced. Chapter 18, verse 24 to 30.
Is that embiggened enough for the audience to read clearly? I hope it is.
I think it's good. That's just as big, at least, as the text on my slides. So,
okay.
Do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, for it is this is after a listing of all sorts of inappropriate sexual relationships. Okay. The text goes on to say, do not defile yourselves in any of these ways, for it is by such that the nations that I am casting out before you defiled themselves. Thus the land became defiled, and I called it to account for its iniquity, and the land spewed out its inhabitants. But you must keep my laws and my rules. You must not do any of those abhorrent things, neither the citizen nor the stranger who resides among you, for all those abhorrent things were done by the people who were in the land before you, and the land became defiled. So let not the land spew you out for defiling it, as it spewed out the nation that became before you. All who do any of those abhorrent things, such persons shall be cut off from the people of Israel. You shall keep my charge not to engage in any of the abhorrent practices that were carried on before you, and you shall not defile yourselves through them. I am Yahweh, your God. Ew. Those icky Canaanites were so bad, they defiled the land. They're
Canaanites,
so
shrimp
terrible.
eaters.
Yeah, exactly.
From Satan's God in the Bible.
Vish, are you familiar with I'm gonna show this because I think it's apt. Are you familiar with the Hutu 10 Commandments? I know people probably can't read this. So
this is from the Hutu and Tutsi wars?
Yes, in 1990, in a Hutu propaganda rag called Kangura, sorry. In December 1990, they published the Hutu 10 Commandments, which is their rationale for the elimination and the extermination of the Tutsis. And I want you to listen to these. I'm going to read them. I don't expect that anybody can actually read the text that's on the screen. I'll read these to you. But think about how similar this sounds to what we just read in the book of Leviticus. And we can go other places, to the book of Deuteronomy, to hear much the same thing. Commandment number 1, all Hutus must know that the Tutsi woman, wherever she may be, is serving the Tutsi ethnic group. In consequence, any Hutu who does the following is a traitor: acquires a Tutsi wife, acquires a Tutsi mistress, acquires a Tutsi secretary or dependent. Number 2, all Hutus must know that our Hutu daughters are more worthy and more conscientious in their role of women, spouse, and mother. Are they not more beautiful, good secretaries, and more sincere? Number 3, Hutu women, be vigilant and bid your husbands, brothers, and sons to come to their senses. Number 4, all Hutus must know that the Tutsi is dishonest in business. His only goal is ethnic superiority. We know from experience. In consequence, any Hutu who does the following is a traitor: whoever makes an alliance with a Tutsi in business, whoever invests his money or state money in a Tutsi company, whoever lends money or borrows it from a Tutsi, whoever grants favor to Tutsi in business, granting of import license, bank loans, building parcel, public tender offers, etc. Number 5, the strategic, political, administrative, economical, military, and security positions must be reserved for Hutu. Number 6, the education sector Students and teachers must be of Hutu majority. Number 7, the Rwandan armed forces must be exclusively Hutu. The war experience in 1990 teaches us this lesson. No military men should marry a Tutsi woman. Number 8, Hutu must stop taking pity on Tutsi. You know, there's a text in Deuteronomy that says, your eye shall have no
Shall not
pity.
pity them. Yeah.
Number 9, Hutu, wherever they are, must be united, interdependent, and worried about their Hutu brothers' fate. Hutu from inside and outside Rwanda must constantly look for friends and allies for the Hutu cause, beginning by their Bantu brothers. They must constantly oppose Tutsi propaganda. Hutu must be strong and vigilant against their common Tutsi enemy. And finally, number 10, the social revolution of 1959, the 1961 referendum, and Hutu ideology must be taught in all Hutu and at all levels. All you Hutu must widely spread this message. Any Hutu who persecutes his brother for having read, spread, and taught this ideology is a traitor. So, Paul Copan, are you prepared to say we should just take the Houthis' word for this in their evaluation?
Hell no.
I mean, on this metric, the Tutsis deserved it.
Well, our law says that they're lesser, so they must be.
It's gotta be it, right? So, I mean, this is the heinous part of this, right? Is the they just deserved it excuse is the rationale. This is the question she asked and he failed to answer. Yes. Yes. They're using Yahweh to justify the idea that you can exterminate these people. That is what they're doing. And he's just going to blow right past this.
Dehumanizing rhetoric tends to rhyme. Age to age, culture to culture.
Yes.
And this is one of those things where the rhetoric is there to make the perpetrators of violence feel better about what they're doing or make their supremacy feel like it's justified. So you should not read it uncritically. You should not just take it at face value. You know, there's a lot of people in the chat rightly pointing out that this is one of those things that we keep seeing, like the Nazis did it, Belgium, American slavers, all of these things. Again, they rhyme. And
they rhyme.
This is one of those things where you really, really have to look and examine historically and archaeologically what is going on with the biblical text, because the conquest of Canaan did not happen, especially the way it's printed. They did not go in and wipe out all the Canaanites except for a few are bad. Oh no, they're causing problems. That did not happen. Now, does that mean, oh, well then we can just ignore the rhetoric? No, you take the rhetoric and you read it as a reflection of them going, we're here in this place now, we have the power, and we deserve it. We deserve it.
Yep.
We can keep what we took or have, either way, possibly both, because, and then you fill in the blanks with these polemics. It's not saying, oh, well, because, you know, the conquest and the genocide didn't happen, then, okay, well, that's fine. It's just like people talking. No, it's important because these kinds of rhetoric are used even in the modern day to dehumanize. So you really need to look this in the face and go, we do not accept this kind of like moral justification and this kind of dehumanizing rhetoric. We do not accept this as something that we consider binding.
It's justifying resource capture. It's the way to make it easy, and it's the way to make it happen. All right, let's watch. Stop it at 3:25.
Okay, you don't want to do Deuteronomy or anything like that?
No, we'll forget about those. So,
all right. Oop, it helps if I put it back on the stage. My bad.
that they're to drive out the Canaanites. That's the major command. Drive out.
It's
If
the
you're
major
driving,
command.
you haven't destroyed them. The land is going to vomit out the Canaanites, and he says, and the land is going to vomit you out too if you imitate the practices of the Canaanites. In fact, we do see that is actually takes place with the northern kingdom of Israel, that the Assyrian.
That is post hoc rationalization again. This is post hoc rationalization. Okay,
Yep.
and look, and again, a lot of people do this. A lot of cultures do it. It is not exclusive to this people in this area at this region. It's not. Okay.
True.
Many, many, many cultures do this. But this guy going, well, I'm just taking it for granted that what the text says God considers, polluting to the land, that just is a fact that I can assume. So if there's no Canaanites, then they must have been doing the bad stuff. And it was justified to get rid of them. And also the Assyrians, I mean, we know historically they came in and vacated most of the northern kingdom, but they deserved it. Bro. This is so gross.
Yeah.
Put this guy into the contraption with William Lane Craig. These guys are. Ugh.
Come in as a result of God's judgment in 722 BC, and then the southern kingdom goes into exile in 586, 587 BC to Babylon. Of course, they end up returning. Many of them do.
Hey, Kip, remind me: are there any writings in the biblical corpus that discuss why Judah went into exile in Babylon?
Oh yeah. But he's not wrong in the sense that like the book of Leviticus pretty explicitly says that it's because you're acting like Canaanites that I'm
like the Babylonian exile specifically.
You from yes, exactly. But there's a variety of different explanations for it too, in the same direction. It's the failure of the prophets are a little more there, it's because the kings and the leaders were bad and didn't look after the kingdom and the people properly. That's sort of what they look to. But
I should be a little more direct, I guess. For instance, when the Romans destroyed the temple in Jerusalem,
right?
That is a geopolitical thing that we can verify with history. But if you read Jewish texts from that time and later, it wasn't the Romans just did this because of all the rebellions. The reason given for the destruction is baseless hatred between Jews. And it's a way to take control back of your own fate. Because, well, if you're at the mercy of the Romans, then what are we even doing? Is God even there? Right. But oh wait, if we actually break God's laws, then Rome can come in and just destroy the temple without any interference from God. Because hey, if you break enough of it, he's hands off when your enemies come rolling in. So this is one of those things that I was trying to get to, is you read the texts as post hoc theological justifications for geopolitics. It makes you feel like you're in control of your fate because, hey, if you're at the whims of the Assyrian Empire or the Babylonian Empire or the Romans or whoever, well, that sucks. And it really makes you uncomfortable when you're thinking about, well, is God really looking out for us? But if you go, oh, wait, no, actually, this is our fault for, XYZ doing bad things theologically. Then you don't feel like you're at the mercy of powers that you can't control.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, very true. What he's doing here, though, I would say it's even worse because part of what he's engaging in here is reinterpreting the language even. On the basis of post hoc rationalizations of what happens. So go to 325 and then I have a few things to say. So so I think just 10 more seconds. Oh, yeah, okay.
You know what? F it.
Another part of the question.
Exactly. No, just leave it. So I'm gonna
Seem to suggest.
Okay,
so he
you're gonna have to
said,
stop saying "all right" and then keep talking.
sorry. Okay.
Sending me mixed signals.
So he said, right, that the primary command in the biblical text is to drive out the Canaanites, because this is somehow a softer form, right? It's not as bad as just killing everyone if you're driving them out of their homes into the who the hell knows. But where on earth is he getting that? You can say that the main point, because the Bible will use different terms to describe some of the same things. How are we deciding what the major command is here? Right? So the word for drive out is garash. It occurs in now. That's just what it means to drive out. So as you can imagine, there's all sorts of places where it's used where it has nothing to do with the Canaanite conquest. But in terms of getting rid of the Canaanites, where it's used in that context, this is the primary text where it occurs, is Exodus 23 verses 28 to 31. It happens there 4 times. We won't bother looking at the text. You'll just have to take my word for it and go back and look. It's repeated again in Joshua 24 verse 12 and verse 18. Interestingly, this word is only used in this context, in these texts, a total of 8 times. Also, it's never used in Numbers to describe the expulsion or the elimination of the Canaanites, or Leviticus, or Deuteronomy. Right away, this suggests to us that this is a term that's particular to the writer of, in this case, it would be like the covenant. It's either the covenant code or the next section in the book of Exodus. I don't quite remember where the covenant code ends. So it's what Cain says. God is
God
exactly.
drove me out.
So as it's applied to the Canaanites, this is it 8 times. And 4 of those times appear here in this one text in Exodus chapter 23.
Interesting.
So the word that we commonly translate as to wipe them out or to utterly destroy is this verb charam. I usually translate it as to make a charam offering because it's complicated and it carries with it cultic implications, which I'll talk a little bit later. Look at all these places where it's used. It occurs 24 times. 24 times with reference to the Canaanites. And it's preferred by the author of the book of Deuteronomy. You can see lots of that there, but it also appears in Numbers. Interestingly, the term never occurs in Exodus at all. The one and only time it appears in Leviticus, it has to do not with set it, because really what the verb means in the context of the conquest is that you're setting aside these people as a special devotion to Yahweh, and then the people are explicitly instructed to kill them by they made a harem offering of them. They struck them with the sword. They killed them all, man and woman, old and young, from cattle to sheep to everybody. Everything's wiped out. That is the sense of what's happening in this term. So it very generally it means this setting aside, this separating out for a special devotion to Yahweh. So in the book of Leviticus, and he's gonna talk about this a little bit later. It occurs there with reference to a person who is set aside for special service to Yahweh using this verb. He's not killed there. As you can imagine, apologists lean into this one place, right? This one instance where the verb is used like this. And now they want to stretch it elastically to apply to all these other places where it's abundantly clear that this means a total slaughter in fulfillment of your vow as your devotion to Yahweh. So it's very inappropriately, and I'm just gonna say, like, that's bullshit. Show me why you think garash or to drive out is the major command. Why on earth would we think that? Like, what is your metric for that? I'm giving you some data here, and I'm providing you a lot of context in terms of how this word is applied, how these words are applied, and I'm saying you are reading the text wrong if that's the message you're coming away with.
It's like
it was probably
the displacement with obliteration.
Yeah. And I think it's probably the term, right? Like garash is the term preferred by the author of the book of Exodus. He doesn't use haram. But you can't, again, you know, the Bible here, right? It's just this it's just this text that just doesn't do
univocal voice.
It's not that. You can't do that. You have to look at all of it, and you then have to figure out why language is used in one part of the text where it's not used in another. So, and when you do it this way, it's difficult to identify the major command, unless you're going to do like what I did and actually sit down and count number of occurrences. All right, let's. I'm gonna take that.
Another
off.
thing that I think we're circling in terms of reading the text is people reading it historically as if it's describing things that legitimately actually happen the way they're described, versus reading it as a record of what the people at the time thought. Those are two completely different things. This is not an objective account of history. This is recording how these people, these authors, these redactors thought of their identity, of their place in the region, about their power struggles, about the way they did ritual life. It's recording them at these points in time. When you're reading it that way, you don't feel, I guess, quote, obligated by whatever the morality is in the chapter. You're like, oh, this is what they valued. This is what was important to them. These are the things that they were okay with, the things they felt disgusted by, and that changes over time.
Yeah. All right, jump ahead in the video to 425 and then just play it to 526. There we go.
It was the Israelites rather than the Canaanites. And keep in mind, too, the Israelites had just come from Egypt, and now they're going into a place dominated, these Canaanite cities, these sometimes royal cities, were they were colonized by the Egyptians themselves. So they're going from those who had engaged in traumatizing them, oppressing them, and so forth, to something that looked very similar. These colonized.
That's a hell of a thing for a white American to say. A white Christian American to say.
Cities, and keep in mind too, these were more like military citadels and administrative centers. From what we can see archaeologically and historically, that these cities were not where you had major civilian populations. You might have an occasional Rahab type figure.
Oh, there's not a civilian population. Also, it's totally fine to kill them then, because they're combatants, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't that convenient. That's convenient.
Yes, always.
But those were
convenient.
more in the outlying areas. The civilians were, and it was basically those who are the military and administrative personnel who were inhabiting these cities. And somebody like Rick Hess at Denver Seminary has.
Anyway.
Yeah. So this is the point, right? Like, it's okay because these cities in Canaan are not they're not like modern cities where they're places where a lot of people live, and they're more just these military citadels and forts filled with soldiers, right? And bureaucrats. That's that softens the effect of this. It's so maddening.
Is he saying it's okay to take out bureaucrats? That's some Luigi energy, isn't it? For legal purposes, that was a joke.
Very good. So this is, I mean, this is, there's elements of truth to this, right? But here's the thing. I don't expect anybody to be able to really read this, but you should be able to follow the arrows, starting with the green arrows, and then the blue arrows and the red arrows. I'll highlight a couple of things here. So this is the route now the Bible provides for us for Joshua's conquest, and I want to draw attention to a few things. Importantly, most of these places that we are told that Joshua destroyed, we just don't have any information about them at all. Archaeologists have not been able to locate most of the cities that are listed in these in these records of destruction, but we do have a few. The first of these is Lachish, which is which is in the south. It's about it's about 25 or 30 kilometers thereabouts west southwest of Jerusalem. And here's what we know about Lachish. Now, I've done a couple of things here in looking at a couple of these cities. First of all, there's a lot of destruction layers to all of these urban settlements in Canaan, and part of the trick is identifying the right destruction layer to the right period. So people, in reading through the conquest stories and attempting to align the destruction of Lachish to what Joshua did to the city in Joshua 10:31-32, we'll look at Lachish 6. Lachish 6 was about 7 hectares in size. It was the largest city in southern Canaan, the largest city. It suffered a type 1 destruction. An archaeologist in Eastern Europe has identified 4 types of destruction as a way to help us understand what happened at a lot of these places. So a type 1 destruction is the complete burning of an entire city. A type 2 destruction has signs of fire, but only in public buildings. A type 3 destruction has signs of fire, but only on the fortifications. So the outside of the city, the walls were burned. And a type 4 destruction has no signs of fire at all. So Lachish 6, which is 7 hectares, suffered a type 1 destruction in around 1200 to 1140 BCE. Joshua 10 verses 31-32 tells us that Joshua came and destroyed the entire city and killed everyone in it. They wiped out everything that breathes. That's what the text tells us. Based on the size, the footprint of the city, and the archaeological finds there, archaeologists are thinking that there could have been 2,000 people who were living there. That's not just soldiers and bureaucrats. It's not. Those are civilians. Okay? So, if this is the city that apologists want to assign to the conquest of Joshua, then stop saying that this is just an administrative center. It absolutely is not. And it gets worse, because from the campaign in the south, Joshua then marches his forces up north to meet the king of Hatzor, who has put together a coalition of cities in the northern region. And we don't know the locations of any of these cities that are mentioned in the text, but we do know of Hatzor. And the reason we know of Hatzor is because it is by far the largest city in the entire region. 80 hectares. 80 hectares. Hatzor 13 is the destruction layer that's usually assigned to this period. It's a type 2 destruction layer, which is kind of interesting, meaning that in actual fact, the entire city wasn't burned as the text says. And this happened in 1250 BC. You can see there's a pretty protracted period of time there between these destructions, which is part of the another one of the problems with the text, right? It's impossible to line these things up with what is mentioned there, because you're looking at a 100 to 150 year period of ongoing destruction to a lot of these cities. But here's the thing. Hatzor is a gigantic city. The book of Joshua says that he marched his forces up there, destroyed the city, and killed everything that breathed in the city. It could have been as many as 12,000 people living there. This is not just a fort or an administration center. This is a city filled with civilians. So apologists, if you're going to continue to make this claim about the historical accuracy, the historical reliability of the book of Joshua, then you need to own this. You need to own this. The book tells us that this gigantic city filled with civilians was destroyed by the Israelites. Okay? No, Paul Copan. You can't just walk away from this. It's just a bunch of administrative centers. And there's these other cities too, right? We know of destruction at Megiddo, which might have been part of this this coalition at Hatzor, if the text is to be believed. The dates there also problematic. This city, about 6 hectares, again, probably between 1,500 to 2,000 people who lived there. So no, you don't just get to skate away from this on the excuse that these are only administrative centers. They are not. Not all of them. Not all of them. If you're going to own the story, own the whole thing.
But it makes us look bad.
That's part of the problem, right?
I mean, sometimes it is that simple.
Laid some of these things. But that's, I think, a very interesting and important thing to keep in mind. Also, the ancient Near East language engaged in a lot of trash talk when it came to military battles. We totally annihilated those guys.
So was it a conquest or was it trash talk? Pick a lane, Paul. Pick a struggle, my man.
Yeah.
It can't be both. Like, if it looks bad, well, it's just trash talk. But when it holds up something that I want to uphold and justify, well, then it actually happened. Like, again, pick a struggle, guy. You can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, Berkete, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. The conquest totally happened and was moral. And they wrote down true history, except they also exaggerated about the size of the cities and killing all the people. But also, it's written as history. Yeah.
It's such a quagmire. Such a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
okay.
Press play.
We wiped them out, man, woman, young and old. And what you have going on is the Israelites using that same sort of hyperbolic language, that sort of
again, did they wipe them all out? We've dealt with this on stream before.
Yeah.
Because either God said wipe them out and they did, and that was fine, which we don't like. God said wipe them out, and they didn't do the whole thing, and God got pissed at them. God didn't actually mean wipe them out. He was just exaggerating, and they did, and it pissed God off. They killed everybody. Or God didn't say it. They assumed it and just didn't go all the way anyway, which, again, is still shitty. Pick one.
Yeah. It's all bad.
It's all bad. Goodness, guy.
Trash talk like we use with our sports teams and so forth.
Really? Sports teams of war. Totally same.
You know,
Super
the
Bowl,
big difference.
Totally like Conquest of a region, guys. Just trash talk.
Yeah. I feel like I keep saying the same things over and over, but the big difference here is that when we brag about annihilating our closest rivals in a sporting contest, nobody dies. Right?
Well,
that's the big difference here.
Extremely rare cases, but it's not on purpose.
Well,
it's not on purpose.
I'm a hockey fan, so I know this better than most.
Well,
but,
I was thinking about like concussive damage. That's not someone trying to kill you. It's a byproduct of the physical nature, the lack of
that too. Yeah. But that's that is the fundamental material difference here.
And Domingo Aviles wins today. Goddamn.
I guess they were just bragging too.
Only bragging too.
Yeah.
Cook them. Thank you, Domingo.
Very good. Let's play.
But when you read these texts, you see that there is a lot of hyperbole that is used. So you, like, for example, one battle where the Israelites are fighting against these two Amorite kings in Numbers 21, Sihon and Og. Well, you have, it's first of all, they drive out the people from the villages in Numbers 21, and then they fight. It says they fought against the king, his sons, and his army. So it's clearly combatant versus combatant, fighting. But Deuteronomy, which utilizes that sort of hyperbolic rhetorical language, says, man, woman, young and old. But when you look at the actual battle scene, it was actually between combatant armies. So
what happens if you look at the archaeological record? I'll wait.
Well, you don't find any of that. But what happens if we actually look at the text?
Mm-hmm.
Should we look at the text?
Deuteronomy hypes up that language, and Deuteronomy is very much known for that sort of rhetorical trash talk. But actually, when you look at the battle itself, it wasn't at all that kind of a construction. It wasn't man, woman, young and old. The totality of civilians. It was actually just between combatants.
Just between combatants.
Can we go to the tape?
You hear that? Yes. Let's go to the tape. Let's go to the tape. We're going to look at Numbers chapter 21.
Okay. Yeah.
Starting at verses, what is it? Verse 21 to 35. So Numbers 21, starting at verse 21. Do you want me to pull it up? Oh, you got it.
All right, let's go to the tape.
Remember what he said, right? The text said that they are to drive them out. Then that they drove out the civilian population first. Then they fought against the king and his son and the army. That's what Paul said is in the text. So,
all right. So it's 21.
Numbers 21. Starting at right here at verse 21.
All right.
Now
Israel now sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, let me just pass through your country. We won't turn off into the fields or the vineyards. We won't drink water from the wells. We will follow the king's highway until we have crossed your territory. But Sihon would not let Israel pass through his territory. Sihon gathered all his troops and went out against Israel in the wilderness. He came to Yahaz and engaged Israel in battle.
Pause for a second. Pause for a second. Because we need to look at this. Scroll back up to the beginning of verse 23 so we can see it all. What does it say here? Sihon gathered at Kol Amo.
All his people.
His people.
Mm-hmm.
His people. I don't like troops there. All his people.
JPS kind of dropped the ball.
Okay. All his people. And went out against Israel in the wilderness. Okay.
And notice it doesn't say Israel's fighting men. It's the whole people versus a whole people. That's setting this up. Yeah.
That's how this
Verse 24.
So how's this set up?
Israel put them to the sword and took possession of their land, from the Arnon to the Yabok, as far as Oz of the Ammonites, for Oz marked the boundary of the Ammonites.
Pause.
It's interesting.
It says,
put them to the sword. Herev.
Put them to the sword. Vayakehu. That's Nakah. It means they stabbed them. They killed them. All his people, they killed with the sword. That's the progression here. Okay.
Okay.
What's next?
Israel took all those towns, and Israel settled in all the towns of the Amorites, in Heshbon and all its dependencies. Now, Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who had fought against a former king of Moab and taken all his land from him as far as the Arnon. Therefore,
fun little ditty.
The bards would recite, I'm sure there's a tune, "Come to Heshbon, firmly built, and well founded is Sihon's city. For fire went forth from Heshbon, flame from Sihon's city, consuming Ar of Moab, the lords of Bamoth, by the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh. His sons are rendered fugitive, and his daughters captive by an Amorite king, Sihon. Yet we have cast them down utterly. Heshbon, along with Dibon, we have wrought desolation at Nophah, which is hard by Medeba." So Israel occupied the land of the Amorites.
Okay, pause. Copan said that they drove out the civilian population first, right? Did we see that in the text?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where?
Let me just scroll. Israel put them to the sword and took possession of their land.
But that's not driving
towns
them
and settled
out.
in the towns.
That's killing them all.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
Took them off the
different.
census.
Yeah. So no.
If you kill them all, then their land is empty, and you can
kill
just
them all.
live
The land is empty.
in their spot. Yeah.
So yeah. All right. Let's read about Og, King Og of Bashan.
Oh, king of Bashan. Okay. Then Moshe sent out to spy Yazer, and they captured its dependencies and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. They marched on and went up the road to Bashan, and King Og of Bashan with all his troops, again,
his people, Kolamo,
came out to Edrei to engage them in battle. Do you want to keep going?
Yep.
Okay. God said to Moshe, "Don't fear him. I've given him and all his et kol amo, all his people, into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon."
Kill them all.
The sword. That's what they did. We literally just read it. So they defeated him and his sons and all his troops. Again, Amo,
all his people.
Until
and then what?
No remnant was left him. And
no one remained.
No survivors.
Because they're all dead. I mean, he just just read the text, Paul, and stop lying about it. That is not what is you did not represent this story correctly. I don't think we need to driving out civilians. It is correct. It is still genocide, even if Copan's entire argument is granted. It's still ethnic genocide. Yes.
And when you face that, the best that any apologist can do is, they deserved it. That's the best they have.
That's what we're left with, right? Yeah.
And that's not any different than what the Hutus said about the Tutsis. Yeah, they deserved it.
Yeah.
They're less.
Okay. So yeah, I don't think we don't need to look at the Deuteronomy account of this. It's enough to see that he's just wrong about the text as it stands, as he presented it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go back to the video, and we'll continue watching for about another minute and a half.
the conquest narratives, I think a lot of people find very disturbing. So does God endorse what looks like ethnic cleansing? And why did God command the killing of entire nations, or what seems like he commanded the killing of entire nations, including women and children? There are multiple scriptures that seem to indicate this, and a lot of people have issues with it. So yeah, what do you say with that?
As I look at these different texts, you can see that there is hyperbole or exaggeration in.
Is this hyperbole? They defeated him and his sons, that's Banov, Vetkol, Amo, and his people.
All his
Not
people.
until
all
Bill
his
T.
people.
Until no remnant low was left
Survivor.
to him.
You could say survivor.
Yeah.
There was no survivor left for him.
No survivor left for him.
They're all gone.
In possession of his country. Artso.
Because they're all dead.
His land. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that what? Because here's the thing. God said, do what you did to Sihon.
Mm-hmm.
So right up here, when it says Israel put them to the sword and took possession of their land, Israel took those towns and settled in all of them. God said, like, yeah, just do that.
Just do the same thing.
Yeah, do the same thing, but to Og, King of Bashan.
And no one was left.
Yeah.
So.
Because why would you leave a surviving populace in a place you want to occupy? It's kind of inconvenient.
Yeah.
They tend to resist.
Yeah. So yeah, he's wrong about the text in terms of hyperbole. All right.
Oh, just hyperbole.
In all of these kind of major war texts, the Amalekites or Sihon and Og and so forth, and even the battles in Joshua, where you have mention of, we left no survivor, we left alive nothing that breathes. And then you read in a chapter or two later that those people are still there and that they're being fought against again. And then you have mention of, for example, Judges chapter 1, where you get more of a realistic account, where you have kind of an idealized, we totally wiped them out, using this rhetorical language of hyperbole. And then you read later on that the Israelites could not drive them out. They could not drive them out. And they are there to this day. So
then why did God say to do it? Yeah, I know you're not going to succeed. And, it's fine if you don't win, but then I'm going to get pissed that you didn't kill everybody. Like, what's going on, guy?
Yeah. So, yeah. So see what's a big part of the problem here, again, for Paul Copan and for a lot of apologists is, again,
univocal voice.
You can't just read the text this way. The point that he's making is that there are, and I talked a little bit about this, right? In terms of the composition of the book of Joshua, there are these texts which provide this view of total conquest. It's totally successful. Everything's gone and they can move in. Is held in tension with later texts in the book of Joshua where they're still dealing with people in the land. And then you have the book of Judges. He calls it the idealistic versus the realistic. I actually think this is fairly representative when scholars are looking at the stories in the book of Joshua and comparing them to the stories in the book of Judges and trying to gauge which is more faithful to the picture provided, of like the transition between the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. They'll tend to go, what, the book of Judges, it's not historical, but it's more in line with how the archaeology reflects the region, with things that are taking place. It's closer than the book of Joshua because it's the people are there and it's this protracted long struggle to control the land. There is a slow emergence of the dominant culture that takes a long period of time. Of course, not always through conflict, but within the book of Judges, that's a little bit closer, right? So I'm going to read you something from Thomas Dozman's commentary here, where he makes this point about what's happening in the tension in the book of Joshua. He says, the book of Joshua underwent a revision when it was placed in its present narrative context. This resulted in a series of internal repetitions and conflicting themes, some of which are identified by Smend as the Deuteronomic nomist redaction in Joshua 1:7-9, 13:2-6, and chapter 23. These texts reinterpret the story of Joshua with the insertion of two themes. First, the unconditional divine promise in the book of Joshua is qualified as conditional promise based on law in conformity to the book of Deuteronomy. So that's a change. Second, the total conquest of the land is reinterpreted as a partial conquest, bringing the book into conformity with the book of Judges. The second version is a later addition to the book of Joshua. The theophany of the commander of the army of Yahweh also provides a second introduction to the destruction of Jericho, while the worship service at Abal and Gerizim is expanded. In the second half of the book, Joshua's old age is noted twice in chapter 13 and 23. This repetition is tied to a broader conflict in theme concerning the scope of the conquest. The total conquest of the land is affirmed in Joshua 11:21-23, chapter 21, verse 43-45, and chapter 24, 13. Yet Joshua 13, 1-6, and 23, 1-6 countered that the land was only partially conquered. So the point he's making is this. These things that you observe within the text, if you're just taking this very simple univocal approach, I said it, this very simple univocal approach to the text. God damn it.
Amazing.
If you're going to do it naively, then that works in your favor as an apologetic. But that's just being naive about the text. If you take the text seriously and if you read it carefully, you can see that what's actually happening is redaction, revision, alteration within the text.
And there are less toxic ways to engage with this text. There really are.
There are.
I usually don't go off on like my own thing because, I mean, who cares? But I will say proffering it as an option, among many, is when I read this, I say, hey, yeah, I know the conquest didn't happen. But that doesn't mean everybody's off the hook. It means that their mindset and their attitude and their emotions and values were violent. And it prioritized like their, group over another such that they felt it was justified to go in and just displace or kill everyone and take their shit. Like, that is a part of the cultural memory and cultural history of my people. And that's an ugly part of history. It doesn't mean I have to follow in their footsteps. A lot of United States citizens have to reckon with the fact that their ancestors owned slaves. They owned people as property. That is also a very ugly part of your history. And you also do not have to follow in those footsteps.
You don't have to do that. It's true. That is the message writ large here. Okay. Let's bring the video back up. He's going to talk about Deuteronomy 7 for a little bit here. Stop it at where are you on the video? Where is
about
jump ahead
14-ish.
Jump ahead to actually just jump ahead to 8:50.
Okay.
And then we'll play it through till about 9:32.
Okay.
Little by little, you have that kind of attention throughout these war texts. Now, we totally left alive, we totally destroyed them, left alive, none to breeze. And then next chapter or 2, you see the survivors there. Deuteronomy 7 is an example of that, where it says, I'm going to drive, God is saying, I'm going to drive them out. And then, you're going to leave alive, nothing to breeze, have no mercy, etc. And then it goes on to say, and do not make alliances with them. Do not intermarry with their daughters. Well, you've already annihilated them. What's the command for not to intermarry with them or to make alliances with them? In fact, you do see, again, if you understand that this is kind of idealized language rather than literal language, and again, this is hyperbole or exaggeration is quite common in the ancient Near East, which carries on over to today. People will use that sweeping black and white language, and it's used in absolute terms. But what's interesting too is you look at, say, the pharaohs as their accounting, as their war annals indicate.
So I want to at this point, I'm like, my frustration with this.
She's thinking this is complete
thinking
bullshit.
hard. Is this really this is not? I was hoping for more. She's saying
she knows that he's worming his way around it.
So let's look at Deuteronomy 7, because he said a couple things here that I think are worth looking at. The problem here, what he wants to say is that on the one hand, they provide Deuteronomy is providing these commands to wipe everybody out, but then it says, you shouldn't marry them and you shouldn't do business with them. And the apologetic goes, well, why on earth would they say that if they already wiped them all out, right?
It has to harmonize. It can conflict.
Here's the thing, and I don't even think this conflicts. They just don't understand how to read. They don't. Let's look at this. Okay? When Yahweh your God brings you to the land that you are about to enter and possess, we're gonna, by the way, we're gonna read through to verse 4. When you're about to enter and possess, and dislodges many nations before you, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations, much larger than you. And Yahweh your God delivers them to you, and you defeat them. You must doom them to destruction. You must annihilate them utterly. You must make a Hedom offering of them. Grant them no terms and give them no quarter. Then it says, you shall not intermarry with them. Do not give them to your daughters. Give your daughters to their sons, or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your children away from me to worship other gods, and Yahweh's anger will blaze forth against you, promptly wiping you out. Notice something here, okay? This is not a description of what happened and then an instruction not to intermarry with them. No, this is a continuation of the command. Kill them all, wipe them out. You have to do that, but don't not do that and intermarry with them and continue to do business with them. Do you see the difference here? This is not a contradiction even within the text. The author is just reinforcing the point that you have to wipe them out. You can't leave anybody so that you can do these things. That you have to wipe them all out.
These people are going to dilute you in your pure practices and race.
Yeah, exactly. So
also, this is one of the tactics that a lot of racial bigots would use to try to say that, like, white people shouldn't intermarry with people outside their tribe.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. So,
I mean, intermarriage was literally on the books in living memory. My parents' generation. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
We're a big modern society.
There's guys who are there. There was a debate 2 weeks ago on the topic of whether or not it was they didn't say, is this the best thing? I'm like, Jesus, where are we? What is going on? Okay. Bring the video back up. Jump ahead to 10:45 and we'll watch about another minute. And then I'll have I'll have one more thing. Yeah,
what the issue is
we'll do
not
one more segment
Canaanites themselves, because there's, first of all, friendliness toward the Canaanites amongst the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And also, it wasn't an ethnic sort of a thing. There's no, quote, ethnic cleansing. There's nothing ethnic about this. It's simply a matter of...
Excuse the hell out of you, Paul Copan. What are you talking about? Does he know what ethnos is? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Of all the things I thought I would hear today, that is not one of them. Wow. This guy sucks. Paul Copan, you suck. I'll tell you to your face.
You do
behavior that these people are wicked and that they could have a pernicious influence on Israel. And Israel has a commission to bring blessing to the nations, the promise to Abraham in Genesis chapter 12. And if identifying with Canaanite lifestyle and idolatry and so forth, it gets into Israel's bloodstream, then this, runs the risk of jeopardizing Israel's identity.
He said that.
Chat, when a white man starts talking about getting into your bloodstream and bloodlines and blood purity, run.
Nope. You are on the wrong side of history as soon as those words come out of your mouth. You are there is no
why fundamentalist or evangelical Christianity continues to have this problem of ethno-supremacy and violent colonization and spreading like religion via imperial force and launching inquisitions and pogroms and crusades, enacting discriminatory laws. Like, they just keep having this problem. Also, this is another this idea of like, oh, you don't intermarry, you could be influenced evilly by the scary evil foreigners. This is exactly what happens with Christian nationalists when they're talking about like, oh no, the scary foreigners that speak languages we don't understand, that don't look like nice white American Christians. Oh no. Same exact BS.
And mission to the world, again, fulfilled in Jesus Christ, who would be the fulfillment of that promise that God made to Abraham.
Well, his followers sure as hell aren't following through on that, are they?
No.
Great job, institutional Christianity.
Yeah.
Kudos. Really living out the fact that Jesus defeated all evil and set humanity free there.
So you have this overall picture of God the interacting with the Canaanites. It's nothing ethnic here, but rather it's a matter of
Canaanites, Israelites, not ethnic differences.
The writer of the text certainly wants you to see that. But his point here, maybe just finish up this sentence here, and then
are they going to be a pernicious influence on Israel or not? And if they're not, then they can live alongside the Israelites and so forth. There's no problem. We see Rahab join.
Yeah, just assimilate into our culture and do things the way that we do them and look the way that we look, and then you're fine. Just speak English, guys. Just practice Christianity, and then you're not a scary, evil brown person speaking languages I don't understand and don't care to learn.
So
with your scary
you remember the Hutu 10 Commandments that I just read? How many of those were about ethnicity?
Tutsi women and Tutsis
it was all about behavior, wasn't it? They're bad secretaries. They're inherently lesser. They don't do things. We have to keep them out of positions of authority in the government and the military, because it's just it's about behavior. Shall I read a little bit more from Tracy Lemos here?
Please, I need Tracy's voice in these trying times. Tracy Lemos, for those who may have joined the stream late, is a scholar of genocide. Like she does genocide studies, so someone who is very qualified to discuss this.
It looks like your device
at either shut up, either at Waterloo or Wilfrid Laurier right now. She's in Canada, I believe, which is awesome. Tracy Lemos says, most major scholars of genocide, in fact, favor definitions that are broad. They favor inclusion of political and other collective entities and sexual minorities, as well as inclusion of behaviors that do not necessarily involve killing. Exemplifying the very broad definitions of genocide is that of Henry Huttenbach, who states that, quote, genocide is any act that puts the very existence of a group in jeopardy, end quote. It is worth noting that while many people seem to be under the impression that genocides must involve killing every member or nearly every member of a group, no scholar of genocide thinks this, and for obvious reasons. If this were a criterion, then not even the Holocaust would be considered a genocide. To the contrary,
who coined the term genocide? Lemkin, a Jew,
yes,
a lawyer,
yes,
after the Holocaust, who was like, we need a word to describe this specific incident because it was on such a
that
scale,
I survived.
such atrocity, that I need a new word to describe what is happening.
To the contrary, what is necessary for actions to be considered genocidal in the eyes of most scholars of genocide is a desire to eliminate the group from existence, if not in total, in some very fundamental way. Worth noting, too, is that few scholars of genocide seem to favor a more recent term, ethnic cleansing, for they see it as lacking any legal force and as being euphemistic. This being so, so she says she's not going to use this word. At this point, it should be clear that what the book of Joshua describes and what Deuteronomy 20 calls for, the complete annihilation of particular ethnic groups in a particular territory, is classifiable as genocide according to even very narrow definitions of the term. That's it. That's just
and
it.
I heard her speak on almost exactly that same thing at SBL last year.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, jump ahead to 1257. And he's going to start talking about this term, haram, here.
Haram. Okay.
Often cooperating with them. So again, we need to think of this not as something that is ethnically based. And God himself said that he would do to Israel what was done, to the Canaanites themselves. So there's a lot of exaggeration. The word haram, quote, utterly destroy, it doesn't always, sometimes it just means exile. It doesn't mean, for example, in Jeremiah.
But hold on, pause it for a second.
It literally doesn't just mean, it's not so bad sometimes.
It absolutely never means exile. I've seen this repeated, not by him, but the other people have said this. No, don't let anyone get away with telling you that haram means to exile anything. It does not. But here's where he's getting this. Here is how he arrives at this term interpretation. Press play. Jeremiah 25.
We see that God is saying he's going to, or 25, 9 through 11, he says that he's going to, quote, utterly destroy Judah and leave their cities in everlasting desolation. Well, we know that Judah was not annihilated. They went into exile and then came back, and the cities were not everlastingly desolate, but for only 70 years. So
did he lie? Was he JK LOL?
You see what he's doing? Yes. See, this is what he's doing here. What Paul Copan is doing here is reinterpreting the meaning of the word based on the later outcome of what the prophet actually said. I can actually pull this up onto the stage because I have it right here. You and I did a stream a little while ago about Jeremiah.
And while you do that,
Yeah.
Jeremiah 25 says, Simone, is explicitly the destruction of those who are left in Judah, meaning the remnant of those who have already left.
Yeah. Here it is. It's a little small, so I'll read it to you. And this is just the Septuagint version, the oldest version. Let's just stick with that, shall we? Now then, this is what Yahweh has said. Because you would not hear my words, see, I am the one who has stretched out, and I will take all the clans from the north, and I will bring them onto this land and against its inhabitants, against all these nations round about. I will make them a cherem offering. I will utterly destroy them. I shall designate them for horror, for hissing, ruins for all time. Then I shall extinguish from among them the voice of joy and happiness, voices of groom and bride, milling and lamplight. The entire land shall be a wasteland, and nations will be enslaved 70 years. Then in the fullness of 70 years, I shall inflict upon this nation an oracle of Yahweh. I shall set him up for a wasteland for all time, and I shall bring against this land all my words which I spoke against it, everything that is written in this book. So Jeremiah, speaking to the people that were left in the land, is telling them that that Babylon's coming down, and he is going to destroy all of them. He's going to offer up everyone and everything for a cherem offering. And then after 70 years, Babylon is going to suffer the same fate. This is not a way, you can't reinterpret the word cherem to mean go into exile on the basis of this text. You can't do it. You just can't do it. I'm just going to say if this is a prophecy that Jeremiah uttered, I think it potentially could be. He was honestly predicting the end for everyone. He was saying, you're all going to die because of how terrible you've been. He's not talking about exile at this point. He's just not. So, yeah. It's dumb to try and build your lexicography based on post hoc parts of the text. Sorry, did you hear my stupid speaker? Being annoying right now. Let me go.
I was going to say, shouting out Simone, who always reminds me when it is time to light the Shabbat candles. Thank you, Simone. Shabbat shalom to anybody who celebrates. Time to rest.
All right. We got one more segment to do.
Go.
Let's see. What do I let me just look at the timestamps here.
12:45.
Jump ahead to just keep it going. Just let it go.
12:45
until.
All right. I also saved a screenshot of her face because
did you? Because she's thinking.
Yes, I did.
Thinking,
again, this is an example of that kind of exaggeration. Yes, Israel, the Judahites were incapacitated, but they weren't obliterated. And so we see that sort of sometimes the number of commentators have said that the word haram, or quote utterly destroy, simply means that you have had a decisive victory, and that's all that can be said about it. But it doesn't tell us anything about how many people were left surviving. In fact, it's typically understood as exaggerated. So it can mean decisive victory. It can mean exile. Sometimes people are haram in Leviticus 27. But this is simply like a servant he's going to work for the priesthood, for the Levites, and he is haram, but he is set apart from ordinary use for work in the tabernacle. So they're not killed. They're simply set aside or set apart for this sort of...
Literally, the text told us twice. Yeah, they put him to the sword.
Yeah. 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 That's how we know, right?
Guy.
So, let it go for a few more seconds,
Okay.
and then
the same
we'll
thing applies
look
to
at some
fields or
text and
animals
we'll
in Leviticus 27. They're not burned to death or destroyed, but they're simply set apart set aside from ordinary use to be of service to the priesthood and the Levites and so forth. John Walton and his son wrote a book on the lost world of the Israelite Conquest, and
not a very
they
good book.
talk about how the defeat of Nazism in World War II is something similar to what we're talking about here.
We won't worry about
it
this
is
stuff here.
Wow. So
No.
you mean there was like at least a military victory, but all the ideologies weren't completely purged, and the people that perpetrated some of the worst genocides in human history were allowed to emigrate to the Soviet Union and the United States to get involved in their space programs?
He conveniently missed that part, didn't he? He conveniently missed that part. All right. But
fool would think that Nazism was wiped out or defeated after World War II.
Right? Do you see where you live? Do you see what's happening right now in the world right now? Holy cow.
This is
but I want to press home this point about the word haram. He says it just means a decisive victory. No, it does not. He brings up this point that, well, in other parts of the text, it can mean to set aside a person or a plot of land. Yes, but you know how we understand what words mean? We read them in context, and we let the text help us to understand what the words mean. So to finish up here, let's look at Joshua chapter 10. And I've got it. If you want me just to bring it up, I've got it handy. So I will just bring it up myself.
It's right here. Got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Sweet. Joshua chapter 10. Awesome. Okay.
What chapter? What verse?
Let's just let's see. I think let's scroll down a little bit. Because this is so they fight against Gibeon. They encamped against Gibeon, sent a message. Okay. Marched up from Gilgal to combat. Okay. Threw them in Gibeon pursued. All right. Keep going. It's fun when Yahweh hurls stones from the sky to kill people who are running away. That's pretty great. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then keep going until they get to okay, keep going until they get
Joshua, the five kings have been fighting.
Okay, so after he's imprisoned the five kings in the cave, here he says, don't stop, but press on the heels of your enemies and harass them from the rear. Don't let them reach their towns, for Yahweh your God has delivered them into your hands. When Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished dealing with them a deadly blow, they were wiped out, except for some fugitives who escaped into fortified towns. Then the whole army returned in safety to Joshua in the camp at Makkedah. No one so much as snarled at the Israelites. Okay, so now
taught them a lesson.
In the space of like 2 days, he's going to go and he's going to kill the kings first. So he kills the kings, and then he goes and gets their city.
I love how clear it is.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's go past where he kills the kings. So he kills the kings. He says, "Don't be frightened or dismayed." He had them put them to death, impaled them at sunset. He ordered them taken down because he can't keep them up on poles. We talked about that earlier. Okay, here we go. Starting in verse 28.
All right.
At that time, Joshua captured Makkedah and put it and its king to the sword. And then it says, Hecherim otam. He made a herem offering of it.
Or them.
Or them, yep. And every person in it, and leaving none that escaped. So he kills them all. And he treated the king of Makkedah as he had treated the king of Jericho. Then, from Makkedah, Joshua proceeded with all Israel to Libnah, and he attacked it. Yahweh delivered it and its king into the hands of Israel. They put it and all the people to the sword, letting none escape. No survivors.
Every soul.
Every soul that was in
Every
it.
soul.
None was left. Okay? Then, from Libnah, Joshua proceeded with all Israel to Lachish. He encamped against it and attacked it. God delivered Lachish into the hands of Israel. They captured it on the second day and put it and all the people to the sword, just as they had done at Libnah.
And every soul
that was in it.
Just wanting to make that
Everything.
clear.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Skipping down to verse 34. I think that's verse 34, right? From Lachish, Joshua proceeded with all Israel to Eglon and encamped against it and attacked it. They captured it on the same day and put it to the sword. Here again. Where's the verb here? Hecharim kacho asher asa lalachish. They made a herem offering, just like everything that he did to Lachish. Okay, they killed everything and everyone. That's what a herem offering is. That's what herem means in this context. From Eglon, Joshua marched with all Israel to Hebron and attacked it. They captured it and put its king and all its town and all the people that were in it to the sword. Everything that was in it. And no one survived. He let none escape, proscribing it. Vayacharem ota. Same verb. He made a herem offering of it. And all the people in it, just as he had done in the case of
every
Eglon.
Soul in it.
All right. Then he goes to Devere and attacks it. He captured it and its king and all its towns. They put them to the sword. And again, Vayacharimu et kol nefesh asher ba. They made a herem offering of every soul that was in it. They let none escape, just as they had done to Hebron, and just as they had done to Libnah and its king, so they did to Devere. It's spelled out for us in the text. Just read the goddamn text. It will tell you what the word means. It says it right there, over and over and over again. When you make a herem offering of a city, you're wiping all of them out. I want to, I'm going to drop that down. I'm going to bring up just a page, a bit from my book here, where I write about this to sort of spell out what's happening. When I talk about herem in my book, oh, that's not the right one. I don't think, is it? Oh, yeah, it is. It's that one. Yes, there we go. Should I make it bigger?
Embiggen? Yes.
I will embiggen as soon as I find it. I think it's this. Yeah, this is it. All right, let's.
Does it
go
Command plus
way.
work on your?
I could do that, but that's easier. All right.
Beautiful.
So, very nice. So I'm talking about, this is my chapter on sacrifice, and I'm talking about killing animals and offering up whole burnt offerings, like immolating them entirely unto Yahweh. And I here on this paragraph, I say this. Notice in the case of both the bloody animal sacrifices and the tributes that their destruction was the means of their gifting. This is transference. The key term used in these texts to describe the process is to turn it into smoke on the altar. The smoke wafts upward into the happy embrace of the God, fire, a pleasing odor to Yahweh. So the point I'm making here, transference, what this is the way that you get things from this world into the realm of the gods. You have to kill them. You have to destroy them in order for the God to receive them, basically. And this is important in understanding the rationale behind something like Cherem. I want to emphasize the crucial significance of the consumption of offerings by fire. This is especially so with the conceptual world in which breaking that barrier into the realm of the gods was affected not just through death, but by means of total destruction. In the abstract, this principle of destruction as a mode of transference is very helpful in clarifying some of the most horrific parts of the biblical narrative. The story of human slaughter in the book of Joshua is an uncomfortable text for anyone to grapple with. In response to a mandate from Yahweh in Deuteronomy, the sons of Israel are charged with annihilating the residents of Canaan in their wars of conquest. The specific word most frequently used to describe this is cherem, the ban, which was understood in terms of an offering by destruction made to Yahweh. The lives of these people were his quarter. It's his part. Do you know this story, Vish? I'm going to pause there for a minute. You know this story in Numbers chapter 31, where I think it's the Israelites attack the Midianites, and they kill all the men, and then they hold back a whole bunch of the sheep and the cattle and the women, and then there's like 2 paragraphs that follow in Numbers 31 where the priest instructs all the people and all the soldiers, okay, from the sheep, you have to set aside this portion to give to Yahweh. All the cattle, you have to set aside this portion to give to Yahweh. All those virgin girls that you captured, you have to set aside this portion to give to Yahweh. That's his quarter. And they get to keep the rest. Okay? When people go to war in antiquity, because, there were not often standing armies that received, salaries in order to go and fight for the king would have to petition the populace to come and fight for him. Very often, the way to do that was to promise them that if you come fight for me, we're going to get a bunch of shit.
Of the spoil.
And you can take a portion of it back to yourself. This is very important for understanding the significance of cherem. Okay? Here's the text. First from Deuteronomy. When Yahweh your God brings you into the land you're about to enter and possess. I think we read this one already, right? Yeah, this is Deuteronomy 7, 1-2. Numbers 21, 1-3 basically says the same thing. When things belong to Yahweh, he takes them in their destruction. The language of these stories supports the idea that the genocidal elimination of all of Israel's enemies is a form of devoted offering to Yahweh. In the first, he commands their offering. In the second, Israel vows to give them back to Yahweh. When I speak publicly about these terrible fictions, I will often say that the idea of cherem is best understood as indiscriminate killing. The idea being that these offerings through human slaughter are total, meaning they entirely belong to Yahweh, meaning the soldiers don't get to keep any plunder for themselves. The idea,
disincentivize people from going to war for you then.
This takes the form of fanatical devotion, by which fighting men forego their customary expectation for plunder. The promise of riches was usually an enticement offered by a king when going to war. But under these special circumstances, the people don't receive anything. Everything must be destroyed because everything belongs to Yahweh. No half measures.
This reminds me
That's
of the
point.
the Crusades, where it's like, hey, you're fighting for spiritual rewards and eternal glory.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like, hell yeah, let's go killing.
Let's
I
do it.
mean, protecting Christian pilgrims.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Also, there's
So,
something that dovetails really nicely with what you just read, and Simone sent this to me. Leviticus 27. Kol harem asher ye haram. All harem that is haremed
designated for a
cannot
harem
be
offering.
ransomed. Yeah. They shall
Yep.
be put to death.
Thank you.
So
Everything.
anytime you read someone, well, this is a harem, this and this, bam, send them right there to this verse.
Yeah.
And then
Leviticus
go,
27:29.
mhm.
So, no, Paul Copan, no. Harem means exactly what the text spells out in Joshua chapter 10 and then is repeated in chapter 11. Copan said that that verse didn't say that. Yes, that's true. He did see that. He did say that. So, because I'm convinced he either can't read or he refuses to be honest about what the text actually says. What did you discover?
You must absolutely put to death. Kill them to death.
Yeah. Yep. No half measures, no redemption, no holding back. It all belongs to Yahweh and he wants it all. So that is why the stories in Joshua 10 and 11 are so clear about the totality of what happened, about the totality of the slaughter. So yeah, it is frustrating to hear apologists continue to mislead about this stuff because they're not reading the text, and if they are reading the text, they're not understanding the text, or if they are understanding the text, then they're just outright misleading their audience about what the text says. So, yes, the genocide in the Bible is as bad as it sounds. There is no excuse for it. And anybody who attempts to diminish or downplay what the text is actually saying in these instances, honestly, like, what the hell are you guys doing? What are you doing? Stop doing that. All right.
Again, this is something we talked about when you and Josh were discussing with the hang on, I gotta sneeze.
Uh-oh.
Bless me. Okay. When you were talking to Gavin Ortland about slavery, and it's their commitment to univocality in the Bible has to be good. It cannot advocate for bad things. And if it advocates for bad things, well, then they're actually good because God said do them and stuff because reasons. They back themselves into these corners where they end up defending slavery, they defend genocide, they defend ethnic cleansing, all of these things. Well, we can't have a text that has bad stuff in it. We can't have any contradictions there. So then you end up defending slavery. You end up defending all of these horrific things. You did it to yourself, champ. You do not have to hold to univocality. You do not have to hold to infallibility or any of those
You don't
things.
have to do it.
Like I said, you can engage with the text in a less toxic way. It is possible. Lots of people do it.
Yeah.
You don't have to make the choice.
Yep. I just God, it would just be so much better. Just a baby step to be honest about the text. You know, my good friend Joel Carrico, professor of Bible at Northwest Seminary, down the road from us here, takes a different approach to these texts, but he starts from this place, right? This place of honesty, recognizing that there's a lot of terrible things in here. And then one of the strategies that he uses is just taking a canonical approach to say that he's going to read the entire biblical text as a unit, not that it's univocal. There's a difference. Not that it's all saying the same thing, but that the people who put the text together, he'll often tell me, he just doesn't even ask questions, source critical questions about where these texts came from or what was happening in them in their original context, and just focusing kind of on the final form, but not in a way to say it was always intended this way. He's very honest about the fact that this is his interpretive lens. It's his interpretive lens for dealing with the text from a religious perspective. And I respect that. I appreciate that much, right? The honesty of being able to say, I am sidestepping these questions intentionally, even though I know these are real issues, because I'm deriving meaning on this layer. So that's a good start, right? Okay. Some super chats and a couple of questions.
Yep.
Comments.
Just got a few. Okay, we got all those. Got all those.
I think the next one was Jester's, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And Jester for 2. Dr. Kip Davis has scribed no scrolls.
Not a 1. Not even any forgeries. None.
Yeah.
Love you too, Jester.
Are those Leviticus verses related to the metaphysical contaminant? We did that.
Yep.
And then here's another thing, Matt the Huguenot. So Adonai made the land spew all the Canaanites for defiling land despite not having given them laws. This is something that Jewish sages have been talking about for a very, 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 very long time. And I don't have time to get into it here, but this is a question that has been talked about, discussed. So I don't want to go there, but I can recommend some sources later on if you want. Just so that you don't have to start from scratch. You can see what people are already talking about. Like, oh no, how do you legislate judgment outside of your territory and your people? That was a common thing. All right, Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for 2. Ask the Cherokee how the great displacement was.
Right.
Trail of Tears.
Yeah.
It's like, well, we're okay with you guys living here, but like we want to live here and we want to take the land, so you got to leave.
You got to go.
Yeah.
So much better,
yes,
right?
Camby is reminding me to plug the fundraiser, which I will do.
Did you?
Lieutenant Matt the Navigator for 5. Nobody dies in a sports game. The Mesoamerican ball game on your chat.
Right.
Yeah, get on that level. Jeez. Another one. Why read the text when you can just tell it what it says?
Yeah, can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we do that one too? Because I'd like to.
Yeah. Dr. Kip, when was this composed, Deuteronomy? I mean, why did the composers write this or write it that way? Cultural reasons. What do we know of the Canaanite peoples living there?
So I mean, we know. So here's the thing, right? By the book of Deuteronomy, most scholars will tell you the earliest portions of the book of Deuteronomy were composed probably in the late 7th, maybe even the early 6th century, and were instrumental in Josiah's reforms. And at this point in time, and the reason for writing this is propaganda. It's about forwarding the king's and the priest's vision for the place of the Jerusalem temple as the focal point of Yahweh worship that you were to worship Yahweh alone, so no other gods, and you were to worship Yahweh alone and only in this place in Jerusalem. Prior to that, according to the narrative structure of the Deuteronomistic history, people, you could go and there were shrines to Yahweh in other places. Yahweh worship wasn't just restricted to this.
Bethel,
So this is
Shiloh.
yeah. Yep. This is just a document promoting these agendas. So now the Canaanites. Let's talk about this. What do we know about Canaanite peoples living there? So at this point in time, in the like 6th, 7th, 6th century, there's not really any Canaanites left. The Canaanites, as we understand them, are, these groups of people who were living in the land at an older period of time at this transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. And eventually, over time, and due to economic, ecological, social, cultural pressures, formed into these independent nation states like Moab and Israel and Judah and Edom. So at this point in time, there's probably no more there aren't any more Canaanites, but where it's used, where this term is used in these texts, and it's probably with a mind in mind from the author, certain people who are out there. But by this point in time, it's probably being used as a pejorative. You're a Canaanite means that, I mean, it's very similar to how we would use a term like Philistine today. I mean, there's lots of other terrible ethnographically based slurs, right? Like that's essentially what it is at this point, even though there aren't any Canaanites really around anymore. It's a way of saying, oh yeah, these people that were, in the distant past were terrible. That's you. That you're just like them.
Are they not there because they kind of fractured and merged or developed into other peoples? Were they wiped out by the Bronze Age collapse or foreign powers? Like, what was the story
in the same way that you and I live in North America, and our ancestors at some point stopped being, stopped identifying themselves as British or as Spanish or as Irish or what have you, and started identifying ourselves as Americans and Canadians. Like, it's similar to that, where over time, as these smaller independent kingdoms emerged, this became your identity over the course of hundreds of years. So there's no ethnic displacement. It's gradual change through which, Canaanites eventually, they're all still, if you think about this in evolutionary terms, they're all still Canaanites, right? Nobody ever stopped being Canaanites, but now they're in a new, now they're
more specialized.
The Moabites and Edomites and Israelites and Judahites. They're all
Thank you for explaining this
that's
in
better.
terms that Dapper Dinosaur would approve of. Like, you have a clade of Canaanites, and then you have more derived versions.
That's way better.
You have Israelites, you have Moabites, Edomites, and stuff. Like, okay, thank you. My brain just went.
I wish I'd settled on that earlier.
See, you are learning a lot of stuff on that channel, Kip. That's freaking awesome.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah,
so awesome. But it's a great question. Thanks for that. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's the last two from Nick.
Just one more. What are some good layman resources that make the case that harem is best understood as sacrifice and the conquests as a human sacrifice?
What are some good layman resources to make the case harem is best understood as sacrifices and the conquests as human sacrifice? I believe both
I mean, your book actually goes into it. You just read
and
some part of it.
I just read a section from my book about
Oh
it.
yeah, Heath Durrell.
And Heath Durrell, I believe, touches on this one in his book on child sacrifice. I think potentially
Yeah.
Francesca Stavrakopoulos, Jacob Milgram's commentary, which is a gigantic thing, and it's probably very expensive. Jacob Milgram wrote a commentary on the book of Leviticus where he goes into great detail on the ritual aspect of this term cherem. And I have probably developed these ideas maybe even a little farther than some previous scholars. So yeah, that's what I would
So plug your book.
Yeah,
and Heath
so
Durrell's.
if you Heath Durrell's book, Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel, is excellent. It's a pretty easy read too, I think, for an academic book. It's very very plainly written. There's a QR code that you can just use if you wanna go
Fancy.
find my book and buy it. The audiobook is out. And I've heard a lot of people say nice things about it already. Somebody told me the other day that they really like my voice of God. I narrated the audiobook. This was funny to me too, because I was like, I didn't mean to have a voice of God, but apparently I do. So that's fun. But yeah. All right. So that's it from us. What's happening, Vish?
Well, I am putting a link in the chat right now for anybody who is interested.
Yes.
The very long story short is that I had 2 roommates. One of them moved out in mid-December. The one that was left here, I wasn't able to find her for a few days because I was like, oh, we need to get our roommate situation handled. And when I texted her and messaged her to find out hey, where you been? I haven't seen you in a few days. She had fled out of state and had no intention of coming back. She left a lot of her furnishings and things like that, and then just kind of left me holding the bag for 2 months of rent, all these past due bills and things like that, which I have very little capacity to handle financially. And then my landlord is raising our rent by $200, which is just it's untenable to stay at this particular location. So it is time for me to move on. I am moving, hopefully, Lord willing, by March 1st. And as you all probably know, LA County does not have the greatest housing prices, but I'm operating on a very tight budget and I'm keeping the rent amounts very low for this region and looking for shared housing, co-living, things like that, so that I can make it without, overspending or living beyond my means. And this will help me cover last month's rent, deposit for a new place, the moving truck, all of the stupid overhead things that go along with that. So if you are able and willing to contribute, I would be very grateful. If that is not something that you're capable or willing of, you can just boost it and share it around. That would also be very appreciated. So
yes, please.
It sucks. I agree. Prixie Purple and Joe Facetious, I agree that it is very shitty. But I can't control that. So I'm just doing the best I can, and I'm reaching out to people like friends and family and letting them know what's going on. So if they can support, whether that's emotionally, which I also find very important, or financially or whatever other ways, that is something that I'm taking advantage of. So hopefully within the next month, my life will be a lot more settled and I can actually get things done that I want to do on my channel and put out the blog posts and papers that I want to write. So it's okay, one thing at a time. So yeah, they didn't even bother breaking the lease or giving written notice. So that's whole thing I'm not happy about, but I don't really have time to be angry because I have so much to do. So anyway, that's all I got going on.
You saw that, you see that one from Almost Susan, right?
Yes.
And you responded. Okay, well, you respond to Almost Susan. I will talk about what's happening in the near future. So you may have noticed that we're still streaming, and I am not currently revising my role as Viscount Lieutenant Vrelax of the Starship Kongzi on
tonight.
Star Trek Endurance. Not tonight. I mean, I will be back,
Tonight.
but tonight's episode of Star Trek Endurance was canceled, and we'll be back next week, I'm quite sure. So tomorrow, Vish and I will be back for another episode of Dapper Reacts, which is always fun at 11 o'clock Pacific, 2 o'clock Eastern.
Fun.
I always have fun.
Hanging out is fun.
So,
the videos we watch are not always fun.
They're not fun. I'll be honest though, this one is these guys are so they're so dumb. It's honestly it helps to, I don't know, it kind of helps to alleviate the pain with just how stupid, how hilariously stupid they are. So I mean that's better.
Makes
right?
me wonder why I'm doing it sober, but
yeah.
you know.
So we're there tomorrow. And then on Wednesday, I will be on What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You with Zach Miller at 3 o'clock Pacific.
Nice.
6 o'clock
Heck
Eastern.
yeah.
And we're gonna talk about some of the stuff in the book. I'm very excited about it. Some of it is actually he wants to talk more about Canaanites and about the transition from the Bronze Age to the Iron Age and stuff that's happening in the text. So that'll be fun. That's on Wednesday on What Your Pastor Didn't Tell You. And then I will be back on Thursday for another episode of Kiryat Brit, reading Hebrew.
Who's
and
reading
my
with you this week?
guest, I'm excited. It's Jordan Jones from Bible and Archaeology. Yes. We'll be here.
Hell
So yeah. I actually have the next 3 weeks booked, which is pretty impressive for me.
Awesome.
for that
Have
particular
you been watching
show.
his lives? He goes live on Friday mornings.
Not religiously. I've caught a couple of them. So, but Jordan is just fantastic. He's fantastic at doing this stuff in this space. People should go subscribe and watch to Bible and Archaeology if you haven't already. And so that's Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific, 8 o'clock Eastern. And then we'll be back next week, probably on Friday, but I don't have anything scheduled or planned yet. We'll figure that out. So
Bitcore's asked
that's
when
it.
we're getting Josh back on.
Josh now has an open invitation to just drop in at for the Thursday night streams, certainly whenever he wants, and he did last weekend. He wasn't scheduled to be on with Rabbi Chana, but he showed up, and oh boy, that stream, so anyhow, he has an open invitation, so maybe he'll be back next week. If he knows that Jordan is going to be on, he might find a greater
Rein him in.
incentive to go up. So so maybe he'll be on, but he's he has said too that he will come periodically and pop in. So I think that's it. It's Friday night. Thanks everyone for coming out and for hanging out. I know it was a really long one today. I really took advantage of it. Was a lot of material to cover, and I took advantage of the fact that I don't have anything to do now, so that's nice. But take care of yourselves. What's that?
We could watch some spooky movies.
I was going to ask you if maybe we wanted to watch some spooky movies.
There are plenty of classic spooks left unviewed.
Yeah, I have to check in downstairs and get my.
For the chat, I keep a list of like my favorite
over 300.
genre horror sci-fi like films, and I got tired of recommending them over and over to people, so I just made a list of them. And a few people have that list, and they've been going through and checking off what they have and haven't seen. So whenever I want to have a movie night with somebody, and they're like, "Oh, I haven't seen blah movie," like I think Kip, we watched The Thing with you because you hadn't seen it before, and that was really fun. I love experiencing that film with someone who's never seen it for the first time. It's always just so cool to like live vicariously through them, especially during the defibrillator scene. I've seen many people.
Yes. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah, so that's a thing.
It's probably more fun when you can actually watch the person
Yeah.
too instead of just listening. But
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's good fun. There's over 300 films on that list.
It's pretty close.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a
And
lot. But
there's
it's
anthologies on there like Creep Shows, so
Mhm.
it's not all just, one and done stuff. But
yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone. Have a great weekend. Be good. Be safe. And
be
until next
excellent
time,
to each other.
Ha Tikva.